across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Drive and I'm Alex Phillips. I'm with you until 7 o'clock. So whatever you're doing, handle that machinery with the utmost caution. But it's great to have your company. Do you know, I don't often do this show, and I was amazed to come into the studio and see how weirdly pristine it is. Ian Collins leaves not a trace of anything. You know, normally you come in and there's like old bits of paper, the newspapers, biros, murky looking hot drinks that you don't know how long they've been there. But no, this is like the operating room of a serial killer. I don't know what that says about Mr. Collins' temperament, but there's something a little bit weird about someone as tidy as this, so I'm going to trash it up a bit over the next 3 hours. Ready for Kev, who's just going to trash it up even more. I should know, I used to sit by that man, and neatness does not go with his particular brand. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm going to be doing this show until, well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, back to my normal show Friday, and it's a great honour to sit here. Because it's a nice time of day, isn't it? It's a time of day to sort of take stock of what's happened and prepare yourself for the evening. So it means you're sort of changing gear, sorry all the car puns, but you're changing gear into a slightly more fun and upbeat rhythm, which is kind of hard to do, isn't it, with the state of the world as it is today. But we are going to try. I'm going to bore you to death as little as possible, but we are going to talk about the budget and all of the sort of little ideas that have been snuck out in the press. You can tell what they're doing. They're basically using the media and the backbenchers as focus groups. They keep saying, well, we might raise income tax. No, don't do that. OK, we're not going to raise income tax. Well, we might freeze the tax threshold. No, don't do that. Probably going to have to anyway. I think we got away with that one. So we're going to be talking about everything else that is whirling around in a sort of maelstrom of gossip ahead of what's going to be, without doubt, a very painful budget. And then to cheer us up, we're going to be laughing at the likes of that little nutjob Greta Thunberg. We're going to be talking about some of the more farcical and ridiculous stories knocking about in the media. Things that are going to really wind you up, but we are going to try and laugh at them as much as possible, especially, and given it's the budget, the amount of ridiculous handouts we seem to give to people. I mean, whether it's spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on making sure migrants have vapes, now it's art classes, or the Motability scheme. I still can't get over the fact that 1 in 5 cars on our road has been given to somebody because of a disability. We're not talking about where you have a specially adapted vehicle for someone who might be physically handicapped. We're talking about, I don't know, a brand new state-of-the-art Mercedes because you suffer from a spot of constipation from time to time. You really couldn't make this stuff up. And we're going to dig into a bit of geopolitics as well, because on and on rumbles this so-called peace treaty that is really yet to take off between Ukraine and Russia. Well, clearly the Kremlin wrote their idea of what it should look like, which was circulated among the great and the good and the coalition of the willing recently. Not many people thought that was a nice look, so Zelensky's had his shot at it now, and we're going to be discussing what that involves and whether or not it might pass muster in the Kremlin. There's so much coming on, but you just have to stay tuned and look at all the wonderful and glorious stories and guests that we have lying in store. Anyway, like I said, we are about to have the budget. We should have had it about 2 months ago. No time like the presents, but presents is not what you're going to be finding under the early Christmas tree, that is for sure, unless maybe you're wanting a ridiculous handout that you probably don't really deserve. Anyway, as time has gone on and everyone's speculated about quite what will be done to save us from near bankruptcy, the journalists have managed to find Sir Keir Starmer, no doubt somewhere abroad, hunted him down, pinned him to the spot and said to him, so what's going to be in that budget? Here's what he had to say.
But it will be a Labour budget with Labour values. It will be absolutely focused on fairness, and that'll be at the heart of it. But the 3 things that matter above all else, the principles on which we're building the budget are protecting our public services, our NHS, put record investment in, and that means that waiting lists are coming down. That is a good thing, but we need to do more. We need to get our debt down as a country, and we absolutely need to act on the cost of living.
Right, yeah. Going to get that debt down, are you? Going to act on the cost of living, are you? Doesn't seem that way to me. You can tell when a Prime Minister's running scared because they're either on some sort of private aeroplane flying off to some summit where they can't be held to account by people in their own country, or they're in some sort of primary school setting because nothing is as unscary as 5-year-old children. So there you go. You can tell that this is a man very much on the run. Let's talk now to a former government special advisor for the Conservative Party, Mr. James Price, who is, of course, the babber-in-chief. Gert, lush to have you on the programme, James. How are you doing, my darling?
I am very, very well, thank you. And although we may get to talking about Rachel Reeves's evil and heinous mansion tax, I've got some good news, which is that I'll be joining you in the Shire with a house move at some point. So I'm sure everybody that's always bored of us talking about, going on about how great Gloucestershire is, well, you ain't heard nothing yet.
I am so excited. It's happening! Oh, we've been planning this for a long time. We are going to be building a right-wing enclave right in the heart of the Cotswolds. That is correct. Oh, that is such good news. I hope you've got a comfortable sofa because I probably won't be steady enough to drive home after dinner at your place. Right. Let's talking about buying mansions, as Mr. James Price is about to do. Rachel Reeves thinks that those people who have bought a house, which now is worth a bit more, let's say, than it was when they started out, should have to pay extra. Some of the speculation about what's going to be in the budget is this idea that she might raise around 400 to 450 million, which in the grand scheme of things is naff all, quite frankly. It's not even a coin, not even a tiny little iota down the back of the sofa. But she's going to do this through messing about with council tax bills, and those people whose properties are more than 1.5 to 2 million pounds are going to be hit with extra payments. Do you think that's a reasonable way of going about things?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that any extra taxes, given we're already taxed at the highest rate we've been since the Second World War, is the way of going about this. Look, I mean, the council tax bandings haven't changed in, 35 years or something? And that is not good reason for them to stay where they are. And I can see arguments for changing that. But she might want to reflect on why it is that they haven't moved in those 35 years, because politicians realise that messing around with taxes on people's homes is a very wicked and dastardly thing to do. An Englishman's home is supposed to be his castle, and the more that people get the dignity and wonder of being able to own their own home and not having to rent their entire lives because we've not built enough houses or because we've got far too many immigrants who we didn't vote to have here coming in and taking those spaces, we want more people to be able to own homes, but we don't want people to be punished for owning them or to have to sell them because they can't make Rachel Reeves's enormous tax bill. And it just seems like yet another area where she's trying to squeeze until the blood comes out to try and make some ends meet. And that might work in the first year or so as people go, oh my God, I'm being slammed with this extra tax here. But then people will start changing. Will they start selling up? Will they start moving abroad? Well, it's happening in lots of cases already. And Labour seem to be pathologically incapable of thinking through this, what we call the second order consequences of their actions. You might go, oh, it's going to raise this much money. Well, it's probably not actually in the long run. It's going to cost you loads of money, as I say, and people leaving the country, or if you're taxing work and people giving up, and so on and so on. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to be hiding behind that sofa for the budget on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be hiding behind the sofa as well, and then getting on the train to come and talk about it here. But the problem is, I mean, look, I must admit, I'm not massively exercised by those people with very expensive houses having to pay a little bit more. I'm just not, you know. I'd rather we weren't sort of having to tax anybody more than we do already. But in the grand scheme of things, I personally would rather that than, say, someone who's going out to work every day like me having to pay more on income tax. But the thing I don't get about this is it's only going to raise about £400 million, which you blink and you miss it. There's no point in even being there. Meanwhile, she's going to give away an extra £15 billion, 15 billion in extra benefits, funded apparently by this tax rate on the middle classes. So I don't see how the mansion tax is going to cover that particular massive black hole. But because she plans to do things such as getting rid of the two-child benefits cap. I mean, I'm sorry, if you can't afford to have more than 2 children, don't don't. I think it's absolutely irresponsible when people have massive families who aren't in work and then say, we now expect you to pay more money because you set your alarm every morning, you go out to work, you're sort of scraping it together, trying to just sort of fund your basic existence, but we're not doing anything. We're just sort of materialising new offspring. That, to me, is craziness.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're exactly right, the fact that we are taxing people in every kind of way possible because Rachel Reeves has told us there's a black hole and the black hole has gone up and down. I think it's largely been a self-generated black hole that Labour have created through their own economic mismanagement of, giving trade unions everything they've wanted and still seeing strikes going on and all the other economic damage that they're causing and the rich people leaving and so on and so forth. But if there were a black hole, the last thing you should be doing is spaffing loads more money into it on areas that are not going to be economically productive, and as you say, Alex, I think I would go so far as to say are actually immoral actions themselves. It cannot be a moral thing for the people who are listening to this right now to be taxed even more money, to be for that money to then be given to people who, as you say, can't afford to look after their own families or pay or afford to keep those own families. No one begrudges helping the most vulnerable people in society, and actually it seems pretty generous to me that we have a 2-child cap on this in the first place. What that means is that people who cannot afford to look after, to raise their own children, will have the state, the taxpayer, people listening, subsidise them and give them money up to 2 children. And that's more than lots of people get to have. It's more than I've got right now. I'd love to have loads of children, but I'll make that decision, at least in part, based on whether I can afford to look after them. So it's already a really progressive system. And the reason that Rachel Reeves is doing this, despite all this talk of economic doom and gloom, is because she's trying to buy votes or buy support as well from her own Labour Party with your money. People who are listening and watching this at home or at work or in the car or wherever they may be. It's your money, and she's trying to curry favour by using it as a bribe, and I think she's doing it in a pretty immoral way.
I mean, it's a very sort of sensitive topic to raise, but also, by and large, when you look at demographic change in this country, those people having multiple children and then also not working aren't necessarily those whose ancestors built this nation, let's say. And I think that is something else which will stick in the craw of most Brits. Moving on.
And Alex, it's a really important point there, that people tend to think that, well, I've paid into this system all my life, I deserve this, or others deserve that. And I don't think that is a good argument, because if we're talking on pure economics, then lots of people are not actually what you call a net contributor, right? Over the course of someone's life, you actually get more out of the state and taxpayers than you pay into it. So I think it's dangerous for people to start making the arguments of, oh, we need loads of children, as if that was the only end for children to make the GDP line go up. And as you say, if that happens, you start getting into arguments of, well, you don't really want to be funding sort of economically productive children. I don't think that's the way we should go about any of this at all, as you say. And the last thing is that I think people would really begrudge this a lot less if they saw this money was being well spent. And as you say, if it was for people who genuinely need help. And those people who genuinely need help are people who've been here for a very long time, either their whole lives or most of their lives, or at least contribute in lots of ways. Because what we're seeing, the people coming here and saying, right, give me more, whether it's in child benefit, whether it's in housing support and all the rest, and people that seem to show a very low level of gratitude for the hugely high taxes that people listening, again, are paying to keep those people up wherever they're from.
Indeed. Now, someone who might have thought my insinuation that many Europeans seem to be suffering from the issue of low birth rates compared to some new visitors to the country who don't seem to be as destabilised in the same fashion might be Kevin Hollinrake, because he seems to assume that anybody to the right of him is Heil Hitlering and holding some pretty extraordinary views. He appears to have likened the new Reform UK logo to the Nazi emblem. I mean, seriously, when are you going to learn your lesson? Apparently, he's put on X a photo shared by Nigel Farage, which showed a gold disc emblazoned with the Reform logo and the words family, community and country, captioned coming soon. Don't really know what that thing is, but there you go. It's going to be in circulation at some point. And Kevin Hollinrake, in his wit and wisdom, decided to post a link to a Wikipedia page about a special badge created in 1933 as an award for the first 100,000 members of Hitler's Nazi party. Dear Kevin, it's not okay to compare things to Hitler and the Nazis. Love the UK.
I've worked for a former chairman of the Tory party. It's not something I would necessarily have advised tweeting out. It doesn't exactly strike me as a masterstroke by any stretch of the imagination. You know, there's an internet joke called Godwin's Law, and Godwin's Law says that as the length of an argument on the internet goes on, the likelihood of somebody being accused of being Hitler or being a Nazi increases exponentially to it being a definite certainty. And when you do that, you lose the argument, because almost always it's overblown, it's immoral, it's gross, and all the rest of it. It demeans the kind of attacks that actual Nazis did against this free world that we all love so much, and so on and so forth. There are so many good historical comparisons that we could make through history. It's like the lefties who only ever talk about Harry Potter. Read another book. In this case, read another history book, please. And you know what? There are actually some people in this country who, like the Nazis, seem to hate Jews and want to control the state in all the ways they can, and have abhorrent and disgusting views that would be better suited to being accused of these sorts of things. But it's not the Reform Party, or I have lots of friends, both in the membership and in the higher echelons of it. They've got millions of decent, working, patriotic Brits who love their families and their country voting for them. And if we Conservatives want to win any of those people back, it doesn't strike me that this is the right way to go about it.
I always think that when the real monsters arrive in politics, as history portends that they will at some point, probably on the far left, then the word has become, like you said, so cheapened. It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Right,
also, I just think
100% right.
It's just pathetic. It's just really sad. Really, have you not got better political arguments? Do you think you're funny? I mean, for crying out loud, Kev, son. Anyway, Kevin Hollerake there, not Kevin O'Sullivan, that is. Let's talk about Greta Thunberg. I mean, do we have to? Yes, we do. Because I actually find her a sort of, it's that sort of hate scrolling clickbait. I always like seeing what Greta's up to, mainly because she's just weird and has this sort of like crowd of adoring fans who don't seem to notice how weird she is. Also because the more weird she becomes, the more I think back to when she was sort of held up like baby Simba at the UN by world leaders. Oh, lo, behold, the child oracle, the great sage is among us. And she's just turned out to be, well, short of a few sandwiches and a picnic. Apparently she's been banned from Venice. No, not for doing a Kanye West, heaven forfend, but because she decided she was going to start dyeing the canal green.
Oh, I mean, this idiot girl just needs to go back to school, right? I mean, Bill Gates, who once wrote a very Greta-esque book saying how to avoid a climate catastrophe, came out a few weeks ago saying, actually, don't worry, climate change isn't going to destroy the world. We've got all the technology we need to fix it. It's still a big challenge, yada, yada, but it's over. She doesn't need to worry about this stuff anymore. She could just go back to school in Sweden, have a nice, gentle life with her Lord Farquaad from Shrek haircut that she seems to sport these days. But this sort of increasingly desperate set of attempts for any kind of attention, it's really grating. Who on earth is being won over by a bunch of early retirees LARPing as these kind of climate heroes and dicking around with Venetian canals? It's so unbelievably pathetic. If she cared, she'd come on here and debate the pair of us, but she won't, because all she cares about is a random bit of attention from the world's weirdest people. She should go back to school. And by the way, every time we mention Greta, I feel contractually bound to remind people that they can Google, if they really want to, Greta Thunberg, transatlantic boat crossing, and the word bucket, because she refused to take a plane, refused to use a boat when crossing the Atlantic that had a flushing toilet. And I'll leave it there.
No! Oh my God, James, what are you doing? He's not beyond the watershed yet. Blimey, I do like the comparison to a Lord Farquaad from Shrek. That honestly, I almost snorted myself into oblivion. That was so funny. James, I love you so much and I can't wait to call you my neighbour. We're going to have so much fun, and I know all you people listening are so jealous. You want to come to our village, don't you? Well, we're not going to tell you where it is. Thank you ever so much, the fantastic James Price. OK, we're taking a short break now. By the way, if you want to throw in your two-bit, if you want to dye our canal of wisdom green, this is how you do so. You give us a call, 03 044 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. So basically, if you haven't figured it out, unlike Rachel Reeves' budget, it isn't going to cost you any more than it does anyway. So it's basically the same as ordering your takeaway tonight, which is going to be Christmas soon. Start thinking about cutting down the calories in preparation. Just a word to the wise. You can also use that number to send us a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. You know I love a good voice note. Please make them as fun as possible. Come on, we need a bit of cheering up, don't we? 8722 is the number if you're a bit old school and you still think most people use text messages. Apparently we do. And if you're going to do that, you have to write the word talk before you text. OK, I'm going to demand a cup of tea, quick smart, and see you on the other side of these commercials.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Welcome back. Shall we kick off with a cheeky little voiceo? I think we should, because cometh the man, cometh the hour. This is Carl.
I had my first child when I was 18. I had my second one when I was 19. I'm now 37 and I've got 4 children total. Do you know how much benefits I've claimed for those children? None. Ever. I've been self-employed. I've had my own business where I had to get up at 4 every day, 4 in the morning every day. Do a 12-hour day, 6 days a week, never claimed a penny for them. There's times where I've had absolutely nothing, but I've never claimed anything. That is what people should have. That's the attitude we should have, to want better. I can look at my kids and say, everything you've ever had has come from me. No one's given you anything. The trouble is, people don't. They're happy to have the handouts. Cut the lot of it off, I say.
I'm minded to agree. You know, when you hear about all these extra concessions being given to people who are out of work, which are apparently everybody under the age of 25 seems to be because they're mentally ill in some way, and then it's like, oh, you don't want to look for a job. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Maybe we're just going to ask you to come back for an extra appointment to look for a job. Yeah? No. Previously, if you were sitting there and not actively looking for a job, you could have your benefits docked. And apparently that's too unkind these days. It's funny, isn't it? The minute you suddenly say, well, you ain't going to be able to pay for that Netflix anymore. Ooh, interesting how quickly some people suddenly decide they can move off the sofa. Anyway, to talk and whine and moan and probably laugh and scoff a bit more at all the ridiculous handouts that, given that we're supposed to be in economic crisis, we seem ill-equipped to afford and yet are paying for anyway, is the brilliant Elliot Keck. He is Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Elliot, you know, we keep being told that we are in economic dire straits. We had a 22 billion black hole because Tories. We had a massive debt to GDP ratio because COVID. Then Russia invaded Ukraine. And, you know, you name it, it's everyone else's fault but Rachel Reeves. And yet, in spite of us being basically in the doldrums financially, every single week I find out another story about me, little old Alex, and you, Elliot, and all our listeners paying for something utterly egregious. This time we're learning that migrants in a military camp are being given art classes, sports events and well-being sessions. You may as well book them in for an all-inclusive down Butlins, for crying out loud.
Well, I mean, a lot of these migrants, of course, are staying in four-star hotels, which will often provide a higher quality level of accommodation than Butlins. So Butlins may not actually be good enough for some of the people being put up in some of these hotels. Yeah, listen, I think we have a system in the United Kingdom that was built and designed really to be generous to those in extreme need and facing extreme hardship, including a small number of asylum seekers that we could successfully accommodate and bring in. But over time, that has just merged into something truly horrific, where we now have a system that is not designed to support those in need, but is designed to be abused by any Tom, Dick and Harry who has the wherewithal and access to the resources to work out how to abuse it. And it's very troubling. It suggests a sickness in our society and a sickness in our system, and it needs to be tackled.
I mean, I've seen videos coming out of some of these sort of new migrant centres, which are being being put up in old army barracks. I'd rather see soldiers there training, quite frankly. But they seem to be having a whale of a time. There's karaoke machines, there's a football table, they're shooting some pool. When did we suddenly lose our minds and decide that the, long-established international protocol for protecting people fleeing war and persecution was essentially a refugee camp? At what point did someone suddenly go, do you know what? It's not enough to give these people 3 hot meals a day, a roof over their head, bedding, a smartphone, internet access, English language lessons, however many, roll the dice and see how many deportations you can avoid legal fees paid for. But actually, they need to have all sorts of lovely entertainments to keep them occupied. And you can tell, frankly, that most of these entertainments are dreamt up by the short-fringed, sado, hairy armpitted women who seem to think that these young men, who are really quite entrepreneurial and quite savvy. These people have paid people traffickers and crossed multiple continents. They've got in a small boat, not just across the Channel, but probably from North Africa, or they've come somehow from the Middle East all the way over to Europe and then gone through various countries, evading the police or potentially getting caught by the police but getting themselves out again, to finally make their way to Britain. These are hardy young men. They don't want blimmin' art classes and cultural events, do they? What a nonsense.
Yeah, well, that's precisely the problem, and of course we're not just talking about asylum seekers here. In fact, increasingly we're not talking about asylum seekers. We are talking about out-and-out economic migrants, people from countries like Iraq, Iran, Vietnam, previously Albania, countries that are not war-torn, that may be poor, may be difficult places to live in, but that are absolutely not war-torn, but that they recognise that the second you get across the channel, you basically have access to the UK legal system, eventually the UK benefit system. You will get a prepaid debit card, you will get free accommodation, free dental care, free healthcare, the whole lot. And although you won't technically be allowed to work, there will be a massive gig, shadow, grey economy that you're able to access to top up your wages. And actually you can get access to a pretty good standard of living, all paid for, of course, by hard-working taxpayers that now face marginal tax rates of 40%, 42% over £50,000, 51% if you have a student loan. So, you know, people in their 30s and 40s that are paying those catastrophic tax rates. It's all to support a standard of living for economic migrants to this country that many of the people doing the work to pay for that standard of living won't ever see.
I know. Do you know what I often think when I present a show and it's a 3-hour-long gig? By the time it gets to 6 o'clock tonight, that's the moment where I'm working for good old Mohammed and whoever else who's decided to break into the country so he can sing Kumbaya. I don't know, make some stamps out of potatoes. Lord knows what they get up to. Now, finally, before I let you go, I remember the Motability scheme, right? When news of that broke, and I found out that people were able to get a car because they've got, like, I don't know, constipation. And then it transpired that 1 in 5 vehicles on our road, 1 in 5, are part of this Motability scheme. I thought, come on now. I mean, this is just ludicrous. I fully understand if somebody has very severe physical needs, they need a specially adapted vehicle, that they might wish to get that instead of potentially receiving a certain amount of money. That makes absolute sense. But it's a bit like this latest story here, which is apparently certain people on disability benefits, certain claimants, can access nearly £70,000 a year in support to get equipment under the Access to Work programme. It's costing taxpayers over £300 million a year. What is this, you may say? What is this Access to Work? Apparently, you don't need any formal diagnosis. It's a grant. It's not means tested. No assessments required because the customer, I love the fact they're called customers, know what their support requires. And basically, it turns out if you've got something like ADHD, you can say, I've got ADHD and I want to get a computer. And there's people all over TikTok showing other people how you can do this. I mean, what on God's earth? I'm sorry, if you have a mental health condition, you don't need extra equipment for free. I'm sorry, you don't. You might need to see a therapist. You might need to be on a certain type of medication. OK, that I can understand. You don't need a blimmin' computer or special earphones.
Yeah, and the comparison to Motability is really apt, actually, because they're both systems, both benefits that, you know, 40, 50 years ago when we had a high trust society, when most of the British public were like your previous caller, they were entrepreneurial, they were industrious, they didn't want to rely on the state for handouts. And when we had a very different culture, we could have these schemes. They were generally uncontroversial, they were generally only accessed by people that actually really, really needed them. But now that society has started to break down, now that high trust culture has broken down, we need to be really rigorous in means testing. It's absurd that there's any a financial scheme like this that relies on a self-diagnosis. That is so ripe for abuse. And we can see in the 20% increase in 1 year that essentially what's happening is that people are starting to realise that this is open to them, and they know that actually you only have to tell a couple of you may consider them white lies, but expensive white lies for the taxpayer, and suddenly you can get access to laptops, headphones, and all the rest of it. And I think, you know, you look right across the benefit system now, and I think previous law-abiding, honest people are starting to look at it and thinking, well, everyone else is gaming the system, why don't I? And that's a very, very dangerous place for us to be in.
It is indeed. Thank you ever so much, the brilliant Elliot Keck there. You cannot, I mean, every third person now in society has some sort of acronym mental health condition. I'm not saying that there aren't people who genuinely have certain mental health conditions. When people say, I've got OCD, it's like, no, you don't. If you really had OCD, your life would be utterly ruined by it. I've got PTSD. No, you don't. You go speak to a war veteran about what that's really like. I've got ADHD. No, you're just a self-indulgent, lazy nit. I'm sick to death of this idea that we're all mentally ill. My 2025 has been pretty rubbish. Am I claiming to have something? Am I getting a free computer? No, I'm cracking on. That's what we should all do. Anyway, glad I got that off my chest. Now, when we come back, I'm going to be ranting even more because I cannot believe this. Yet again, a Christian has been arrested in this country for basically being a Christian. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Let's shuffle through a couple of messages before we move on to our next topic. Paul from Dorset says the latest news about the budget is that Rachel Reeves is going to blame the Battle of Hastings for her economic woes. Have a good afternoon. Exactly. Who else? Who else's fault is it, Rach? You do realise you're the Chancellor, and even if you inherit something that's a bit sticky and messy, and you did because of COVID, etc., it's your job to sort that out, not to suddenly decide people who want to have a litter of children should get more money, you absolute numbskull. If Kemi Badenoch does not sack Kevin Hollinray for his totally abhorrent and unfounded allegation about reform, then she is not the leader of the Tory party. He has made the final mortal cut, says Mick. I disagree with you there, Mick. Look, Kevin Hollinray has not exactly showered himself in glory. He looks like an absolute twerp in my mind, because anybody who goes around and points at political opposition and shouts Nazi, fascist and Hitler is basically an idiot who doesn't have a better argument. And it's also crude, it's boneheaded, it's pig ignorant and it's insulting. But I don't get on board with this sacking people for just being a idiot, quite frankly. Drag him into your office, make him take it down, tell him if he does something like that again, he ain't ever going to get a safe seat. Let that be that. Margaret in Birmingham says, is there a law in this country written down that we have to give our money to pay for these men crossing the channel? No. It's a Prime Minister who puts other people front and centre while the British people are ignored. I mean, this is the thing when they go, our international law, oh, we can't do anything about it, oh, the ECHR, all these other things, it's not our fault. Ain't nothing in the Dublin Accord that says, oh, when people are seeking refuge, make sure they learn how to make balloon animals. For crying out loud. I mean, you just look at any other refugee camp in the world and you can see with your own eyes what it is. In France, if you've managed to get all the way to somewhere like Calais, you're lucky enough to have a bin bag bivouac you've had to fashion yourself somewhere near a sand dune. No wonder they all come over here. And I don't think, this is even worse. This is even worse. This is the icing on the cake. They're not even coming here for the opportunity to learn how to play acoustic guitar or translate Adele songs. No, they're coming here to work in the black market, eye up young ladies on Bournemouth Beach, fill their pockets with our hard-earned cash, and then go home again. They don't even want these stupid art lessons, for crying out loud. Right, moving on. Something else which has really got my goat. It turns out a Christian street preacher was arrested for, guess what, saying, God bless you. But he's a Christian street preacher. He said, God bless you to protesters at a Palestinian demonstration. Sean O'Sullivan says he's now going to sue Wiltshire police after being cleared of racial harassment. Oh, I'm sorry. As a Christian, if I go and say God bless you to someone, does that make me a racist now? For crying out loud. He preaches at Swindon's Evangelical Awakened Church. And he preaches to people who are homeless. He preaches to addicts on the fringes of society. But apparently saying, God bless you, and also saying to Muslims, pray for the Jews and pray for the Palestinians. Oh, look, he said pray for both of them. He was arrested. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. Let's catch up with Alistair Donald, Associate Director of the Academy for Ideas. Alistair, I mean, look, you've got people week in, week out at these pro-Palestinian marches saying globalise the intifada, saying from the river to the sea, shouting all sorts of things, which I'm pretty much sure would be translated as blatant anti-Semitism, if not trying to incite a genocide. And yet a Christian is just doing what a Christian's supposed to do, which is going around and telling people, have you heard the good news? Jesus came to save your soul. But also basically saying, God bless the Jews, God bless the Palestinians as well. Why was this person arrested? Why?
In short, because we've got a very serious Public Order Act that allows people to be arrested for these innocuous utterances in the public sphere. I mean, it's obviously an outrage. I think you're right that there's a two-tier element to this, in that there's different people that are treated differently depending on what they're saying and who potentially is on the receiving end of what they're saying. It's just a classic hate speech crime in the sense that people can say the most innocuous things. They can then be interpreted by the person on the receiving end, so it's a completely subjective viewpoint as to what's been said and how, whether it causes offence or distress or whether it's hateful or so on and so forth, and they can end up being arrested for it. In this case, the guy's been arrested 16 times across recent years for, as you say, the most innocuous things. And we really have to, I think, stand up now and say it really is time to end some of these laws that allow this to happen. I mean, it really has got to that stage.
But even if these laws exist, and I agree with you, they really should not, it's the application of them, it's the dim-wittedness of the police, it's the fact, and this is what I find the most chilling, it's the fact that increasingly in the 21st century, it doesn't matter if a Muslim points at the sky and shouts Allahu Akbar, right? Which most people find slightly creepy because they've heard it said a lot of times when bombs have gone off. Now, actually, frankly, God is great isn't offensive to anybody, okay? And people should be, if you want to say Allahu Akbar and point at the sky, fine, be my guest. It is going to freak out certain people in a shopping centre, but whatever. But what isn't funny is we currently live in a world where we are seeing active genocides against Christians, where everything that Christianity once represented, the glue that held our society together, the moral structure of our culture, has been eroded and has been constantly under attack. And if we now live in a Christian nation where our monarch is the head of the church and a Christian preacher can't go out and preach the Bible to people in his hometown, that to me is much, much more than just having hate crime laws. There's something else going on here.
Well, as it happens, I'm not too keen on Palestinian supporters or protesters being arrested either. So I think there's a kind of bigger problem here in that the laws of the land have descended into this ridiculous situation where we fundamentally view the public and what they say as potentially harmful, as offensive, as and this is the important bit. It's a decision that reflects our own perception of ourselves as unable to deal with ideas and what is said, which I think is nonsense. I mean, we've dealt with difficult ideas and even hateful language for a long time now. There is a two-tier approach to it. I think you're right in that, in that the Palestinian protesters are far likely to be arrested. But they should have in my view, they should have the right to say what they want as well. I mean, obviously there's a boundary here, and sometimes that boundary, a serious boundary, is crossed. But by and large, for any speech, I think anybody should have the right to say what it is that they want. And we, as the people potentially on the receiving end of that speech, need to toughen up and grow up a little bit and not go running off to the police. I mean, this guy was arrested on the basis of a single phone call to the police. So there's something going wrong here, that someone can make a call, out come the police, arrest him, spent his 6 days in court at whatever cost that was, 20 grand or whatever it was, and the jury acquitted him in 90 minutes, and that actually included when they were out for their lunch as well. So obviously it didn't take very much time to make that acquittal, because the flimsy nature of the evidence is there for all to see. And juries, and let's be thankful for juries in this situation, because they're the people that often actually are the people that do see the ridiculousness of these laws. Because as you point out, the police are the first to wade in and arrest people on the pretense of not very much at all. So I think the problem really is the laws and the existence of these laws, and they exist because society and the culture that we live in is now so keen and eager to take offence, and that then becomes the pretense for shutting down speech.
There's also a liberal lefty disgust against Christianity. Alistair Donald, thank you ever so much, Associate Director of the Academy of Ideas. Let's take a quick call on this because we've got Sasha on the phone from Cheshire. Good afternoon, Sasha.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me on. I just, alongside this preacher thing that you've mentioned, it's just a clear example of two-tier policing yet again, because this preacher's an upstanding citizen who's gone out of his way to probably say something nice and got arrested for it. But any of these pro-Palestinian supporters who are shouting from the river to the sea and all these other anti-Semitic chants, you never hear about any of them getting prosecuted or anything, and it's just a pure example of two-tier policing and how ridiculously unfair it is.
But, I mean, that's because there is this sort of weird, sick relationship between cultural Marxism, which has taken over our institutions, including the College of Policing, and wanting to destroy religion. And the religion of this land is Christianity. And yet the whole Be Kind movement, the whole idea that, well, you've got to love your neighbour, oh, you've got to... Guess where that comes from? Oh, yeah, that's right, the Bible. And it really disgusts me as a Christian myself. It disgusts me when I see in a Christian country, Christians being the people who are the most persecuted, because that is what's going on here. And you're right, it is two-tier. It's this idea that you can lump together Christianity with colonialism, whiteness, oh, therefore evil, bad. And Christianity is a religion that doesn't mind being mocked. It doesn't mind being ridiculed. It doesn't bang on about blasphemy. It doesn't sort of, censor other people. It's a very tolerant religion. It knows how to laugh at itself. And then when I find that, yes, the sort of end is nice sandwich board wearing people who take it a bit too far, in my opinion, are kind of part of the social fabric of the United Kingdom. They've been around forever. The idea that these people should be arrested is just revolting. Sasha, thank you ever so much. Oh. Anyway, another thing that Christianity likes to preach is peace. So let's see whether that can be achieved in Ukraine, because we're going to be discussing with Colonel Simon Diggins whether or not there is big progress with these negotiations where Donald Trump himself is the interlocutor between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. I don't have high hopes, but we can but pray. That's after this.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I was just sitting there, not paying attention, reading through my notes. Let's speak now to Colonel Simon Diggins, Defence and Security Analyst and former Defence Attaché in Kabul. Colonel Simon Diggins, thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. Let us talk about whether there has been any progress in the push for peace in Ukraine. The first sort of 28-point peace plan that we saw emanating from America looks very much like it had been written by the Kremlin itself. Now, apparently, Trump is suggesting there's been big progress in Ukraine because he's been in his lot of sat down with President Zelensky, who's given his side of what he would need in order to agree to some sort of treaty. Do you take any comfort in the idea that there may be progress it seems to me if there's anything that Ukraine wants, it's going to be an immediate by Vladimir Putin.
Alex, good afternoon to you. I feel you're right. This does look very much like not only sort of Putin's talking points, but appear to be actually drafted in the Kremlin. We had some people earlier on today who were analysing the actual language that was used, and essentially it was kind of translated directly from the Russian into English using Google Translate or something like that. It didn't come across very well. I think we were there. More seriously and more substantively, though, people are trying to be positive because at least there's a conversation now running about some kind of ceasefire and some kind of peace plan. The last time we had that was when we had the Putin-Trump meeting in Alaska, but since then nothing has really happened except for more killing and more damage on either side. So that's the positive side of it. In terms of the plan itself, I mean, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for Ukraine. I mean, you've got effectively they have to concede not just what was stolen off them in 2014, but everything's been stolen off them since 2022. And the one bit of the Donetsk province they haven't lost at the moment is supposed to become a demilitarized zone. They can't join NATO, and their armed forces will be cut by a third. I mean, essentially, it's a recipe for Putin in a couple of years' time, and when he's rested his troops, sort themselves out, to go again. In the meantime, Zelensky will probably be gone as part of an election, and then it'll be a completely different government, and the Europeans will have packed up their horses and gone home again. So, I mean, that's the situation on the ground. Very hard for Zelensky to deal with it. He's trying to keep the Americans on side. So I'm not very hopeful this actually is the basis of a sustainable peace.
I can't understand why, in any way, shape or form, America has looked at that 28-point peace proposal and said, yeah, that's good. Oh, we can work with that. That seems reasonable, because it is directly rewarding belligerence. And as you said, it's inviting Putin, or you've had a bite, you can keep what you've got and give it a few years and you can take another chunk out of Ukraine. Why on earth? Why does America think this is okay?
I think America under Donald Trump is a very divided nation. Forget about his domestic politics and everything that goes to that, but the sense of the kind of the so-called forever wars that they were engaged in from 9/11 onwards, I think has left a lot of America, and we don't necessarily recognise it in Americans because we know them so well, as basically traumatised and very reluctant to get involved. That also applies more generally. I mean, even people like Obama and President Biden, who might seem more European friendly, were very clear that Europe was now on its own, and they might have expressed it in slightly more polite and less brash language than we get from President Trump. But the basic message has been the same. But the European leaders, frankly, have not been listening. Putin has, and Putin's been taking advantage of it. And that's our difficulty. You know, years and years of neglect of our own resources, our own resilience, our own defence. And now President Trump basically is going to pull the rug out and said, look, when we said we're going, we really are going. And you're on your own. And if you're not prepared to put it on your own, then you're going to just get on with it. That's kind of what we've been trying to do.
Is it possible? Because I was ruminating on this the other day. Is it possible, actually, that America's scared of Putin?
I think not directly scared of him. I think there is an element where I think President Trump is reluctant to get engaged in a kind of full-scale fight with them. And part of it, and I don't know about his personal courage or anything that goes it, though he seems, he was brave enough when he was being shot at. But I think part of it is that he does genuinely believe, I think it's a genuine belief of his, that war is actually a disaster. I mean, I think he's a businessman, he's a very hard-headed businessman, but he genuinely believes that war is a disaster and then peace is the result. One of the curious things about all these treaties he's been making is the commercial element to that. So inside this 28-point plan, there's also this business about the commercial advantage that America will gain from it. I think he genuinely thinks in those terms. He did it with Gaza, turning Gaza into Mar-a-Lago on the Mediterranean. I think there's an element of him which says, look, war is bad for business. I'm in favour of business. So what we do is stop the war and we start business. And that's kind of how he looks at his deals.
Oh, well, I don't think this one's going to get over the line, but we can but hope there will be peace one day. Thank you ever so much, Colonel Simon Diggins. We're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to be chewing over all of the political fat, spitting out the gristle and filling our bellies on doom, because the budget is the big story. We're going to be joined by James Heal, the Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, just after this. I'll see you on the other side.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, how are you doing? It's 5 o'clock. In fact, no, let me be precise. It is 5. Oh, hold on, give it 2 seconds. 5:03. There you go. If you're on the road, do take care. It's a bit dark out there. Winter is upon us, isn't it? All doom and gloom. I don't like winter. It really does grind me down. I stood there this morning. Was it this morning? I don't know. It was dark. Putting on my makeup, thinking, oh, God, it's about 3 more months of this. 3 more months. And I can't even find myself looking forward to Christmas because Lord knows nobody can afford it. And do you know what I've noticed as well? There was once upon a time, I don't know if you think this, once upon a time, it kind of felt like Christmas was rammed down our throats a bit too much. And I say this as a massive God botherer. But the commercial side of Christmas, you know, you'd be walking around, you know, Debenhams or something in September and they're already playing the Christmas music and all the Christmas chocolates are there and the Christmas decorations and the advertising for Christmas. And by the time it got to December the 1st, you'd want to shoot yourself in the face rather than hear the Pogues one more time. But that seems to have changed. Nobody puts lights on their houses anymore. By this point in time, you know, you've got neighbourhoods having competitions for who can have the most garishly lit edifice. Even the Christmas trees look sad. Where did you get those from? Chernobyl? And they don't even put tinsel on them anymore. You know, a few Spartan lights because they probably cause climate change or something. Everything is just not Christmassy anymore. I noticed this last year. I know we've still got a good month before the big day itself. But is that because we live in multicultural Britain? Is it because we're just miserable and can't afford it? Is it because Christmas is now uncool? But I don't know. I kind of miss it. I want to hear Mariah Carey. Quite frankly, I'm up for a bit of the Pogues again, or Noddy Holder shrieking down my ear until my eardrum bursts. And I want to see the sort of fake snow in the windows and the lights everywhere. I want it. It's gone. We don't even have Christmas #1 anymore, really, do we? Nothing. I don't even know if they still roll out Captain Hook on Boxing Day. Oh, why can't we just turn back the clock? Which is also the way I kind of think about the economy as it happens, because once upon a time, we were a nation who, I don't know, could pay for itself, who had a sensible budget, who didn't have to hide under the sofa when the Chancellor appeared with the red box. But I'm afraid what we're going to have just before Christmas, it seems to me, is the ghosts of debts past and the ghosts of debts future as well. Let's speak now to James Hill, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. James, do you know, I have noticed that what's been going on, it seems to me anyway, that what the Treasury have been doing is sneaking out tidbits and suggestions and headlines as to what might be in the budget, a bit like some sort of ongoing organic focus group testing. And they're sort of poking around and realising what they can get away with. And so the stuff that they're actually going to do, I don't like it, but it isn't the worst of the worst of the worst when it comes to where they're going to raise money. It's going to be bits and bobs of sort of, you know, penny stealing, thievery all over the shop. Bit more on council tax, a gambling tax. You know, we're all going to be paying more for everything. A bottle of wine's going to cost 15 pence more, for crying out loud. But what really has stuck in my craw is considering that blimmin' woman bangs on all the time about how broke we are and points the finger of blame at everybody else. She fails to realise that she can't keep getting out the magic chequebook. And here she is wanting to hand out 15 billion more in welfare. What on earth is she thinking?
Well, what she's thinking, Alex, is that she has to keep her backbenchers happy. And politics is all about choices. And everyone goes, oh, it's really tough. And of course, yes, it is tough in the sense that she can't give money to everyone, but she has chosen to make her choices. And it is clear that who is going to be the beneficiary of this budget those who are sort of on the two-child benefit cap. That's going to be lifted this Wednesday. That is the one big thing she's kept, which she's chosen to stuck with, unlike the sort of potential rise in income tax. And also, of course, 3.8% in inflation for those on benefits. And of course, I think lots of people would say, OK, fine, keep benefits up with inflation, but at least change the incentives in all of this. Let's have some welfare reform. And of course, the danger is that she's putting the money forward now, while of course kicking the can down the road when it comes to the Timms review, comes to the Milburn review, and actually we're just going to see more money spent without any kind of terms and conditions attached to that.
What I don't understand, James, is it was my understanding, it sort of snuck out into the press at one point, that the IMF had said, oh, we're going to have to junk your ratings and, you know, tell you you're going to need a big charity check unless you sort out the situation with welfare. And so the welfare bill was drawn up and it's failed to pass Parliament because, as you said, all the backbenchers think it's akin to some sort of, I don't know, genocide of the poor. And yet Sir Keir Starmer appointed as his economic advisor ahead of this budget a woman who is Deputy Governor of the Bank of England who used to be a manager at the IMF. And I thought to myself, right, OK, they've suddenly read the runes and realised that if they don't cut government spending, particularly when it comes to universal credit and when it comes to handouts, when it comes to giving more money to the workless, the people who aren't contributing to society, then we're going to have to end up with some sort of parachuted in technocracy, a bit like Greece after the Eurozone crisis. So why, if that is true, is she still going down this route? Is it simply for political survival with her own party?
I think that's a large part of the factors that's shaping the thinking. There was a really interesting read in the Sunday Times which talks about the Resolution Foundation, which is a left-wing think tank, and said this is them running riot with this budget. And if you look at the kind of people involved with it, some of the junior ministers, some of them have worked at that think tank, a lot of the key advisors, the people they're listening to, and it basically says, oh no, you can actually soak the rich. And I think we're now really seeing that up until breaking point. We've already seen in the Sunday papers Lakshmi Mittal, one of the richest men, if not the richest man in Britain, leaving this country. And so that we're now having that kind of experiment rerun like the 1970s. We're not going to do a Dennis Healey style rise in the basic rate of income tax, but what we are going to see, Alex, is all the other bits of it. And I think we're going to push it up to breaking point. You asked why we haven't had an IMF-style crisis yet. Well, the key thing, of course, is this country has lots of many great strengths in terms of the services sector. We're now pushing that all to breaking point. And I do think that what we are seeing now is that sense of decline really creeping into our politics. And so after this budget, the second one that Rachel Reeves had, she can talk about sexism all she wants, but actually I think incompetence will be the word that is on many Labour voters' lips come 27th, 28th of November.
I do often think, I hark back to what Nigel Farage said at the Reform Conference when he said they're going to have two budgets, they're going to basically drive the economy off a cliff, and then they're going to be forced to have a general election because we'll essentially have to be taken over by people who know how to add up. And I'm beginning to think he's right. Let's talk now about just a stupid, pathetic, ridiculous, farcical post by none other than the Conservative Party chairman, not a backbencher. The chairman of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollinrake, didn't get the memo from most people on the right wing that it's not cool to compare people that you disagree with to Nazis. And Nigel Farage has put some sort of cryptic post up about a thingamajig that's going to launch at some point, some sort of gold medallion or something that says reform on it. Lord knows what it is, but apparently his supporters are supposed to be excited by it. But in his wit and wisdom, Kevin Hollinrake then decided to repost it and link to a Wikipedia page about the Golden Party Badge, which apparently was something established in 1933 by the Nazi Party to award the first 100,000 members. Now, look, if that is what Reform's going to do, be handing out some sort of, I don't know, looks like a casino chip to me. But, and they hadn't sort of cross-referenced history. Not the best PR, but it's worse PR for Kevin Hollinrake. This isn't a good look, is it?
No, I think that when I first saw it, I thought, are they going to cryptocurrency? And I thought, we're going to have Nigel coin or Sazir coin or something like that. We're going to have something along those kind of lines of non-fungible tokens. But ultimately, just because you've got two things which are gold badges doesn't necessarily mean they're the same thing. And I think that speaking to Conservative MPs today, a lot of them are privately. I've spoken to three of them who are, saying what on earth is going on. Some of the MPs have tweeted publicly about this. So someone like Jonathan Gullis has gone public with it. And also Suella Braverman, who's a sitting Conservative MP, and said that Kevin Hollinrake doesn't speak for me on this. And I think it's a sort of bit of a shame because Kevin Hollerake has actually had a recently pretty good run. You know, there've been lots of sort of Tory takedowns of Labour figures, people like Angela Rayner, Peter Mandelson, all these different things going on. And so it just felt like an odd series of posts on Sunday. He initially seemed to delete the post and then re-put this one up. So I'm not exactly sure what the thinking was going on at CCHQ, but I've had a spokesman quote, which I've posted, Alex, online, which says they're sort of doubling down on it and saying Reform are stressing about on online social media posts. Well, of course, they were the ones who put it up in the first place. So I think this is one they're happy to lean into, although I'm not necessarily sure their own voters or MPs are necessarily on board.
Honestly, if I was to compose a Christmas #1, it would be titled, "Can Everyone Stop Comparing Everything to the Nazis?" I'm just done with it. It's just, it's tedious. Great, I know, we'll make it together, right? We'll go to the pub, have a few jars, and do you know, we don't even know whether that's a gold token, because we don't actually have anything to scale it. As far as you know, that could be Nigel Farage sort of saying to Donald Trump, if I become Prime Minister in 2027, this is going to be your helicopter landing pad. Lord knows. Let's talk now about, well, the handouts we're learning that migrants are getting. Now they're being moved to military camps, because I've seen videos circulating online where they basically seem to have tuck shops and, you know, chill-out lounges and karaoke nights and foosball and pool and, you know, everything you could possibly want if you were on a budget holiday that was an all-inclusive, which basically these people are. Why on earth is this stuff still going on? But also, I actually do want to talk to you a bit more about the idea of moving migrants out to former army bases and what you think about that, how that's going to affect new parts of the United Kingdom and whether there's any security risk posed by that.
So, of course, Alex, I think that the reason why they moved them there is frankly because those who are involved in the armed forces are some of the best this country has. They're quite sort of loyal, pliant, disciplined. They'll go along with what's said, but I do think we are reaching sort of breaking points in terms of the social contract. And so what we're seeing is people being cleared out of army bases and making way for people who have come here legally. And so I think that is testing the sort of social contract between the armed forces, and certainly speaking to those within the armed forces, and I can't obviously name them because they're active service, but they're all very much leading to reform. And I think that very much is a flip side of this kind of dynamic whereby they feel they're putting their life and limb on the life of this country. And what is happening currently, and some of that is this government's fault and some of it is previous government's fault, is that they're now getting pursued through the courts through historic persecutions in terms of things that happened during the Troubles, the armed forces, but also we're now seeing them moved out of these bases and some illegal migrants being homed there. So I think that this is a really big sort of testing flag. I can understand the logic, which is that move them out of expensive hotels into other places, but it is a bit like whack-a-mole, Alex, which is that you move them from one place to another, and there's certainly arguments against wherever they go. Frankly, I'd say that most people in this country, although they may on paper be saying, I like the idea of Britain being a welcoming place, actually, when it comes to their own backyard, they're very much more sceptical about it. And I think this is going to be a big fault line of politics over the next 3-4 years.
I tell you what's come to my mind with this policy of putting migrants into former military bases. First of all, a lot of military bases are set in the countryside. They're not really sort of, right in the middle of your high street, are they? Which sort of poses questions of the impact of 600-odd random men turning up in the sort of green and lovely parishes of England. It also means that places that haven't been impacted by this so far are now going to get impacted. It's sort of spreading the problem even wider. My other thought is it turns out a lot of military bases, are in Wiltshire. And who is one of the MPs for Wiltshire who actually has the most military camps in his constituency? One, Danny Kruger, who's recently defected to Reform. And another thought is, if there's one thing that an Islamist does not particularly care for, and we know amongst the number of those people who are being shipped in from supposedly war-torn countries, but places that have seen recent wars, be they Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, et al. And of course, we're blamed for that, aren't we? We shouldn't have gone into those countries in the first place. That's why we now have to have those people here. Well, if there's one thing that an Islamist doesn't like, who's likely to be among their number, it's members of the UK Armed Forces. This, to me, is a disaster waiting to happen. I think HMOs are worse than hotels, and I actually sort of think, although I'm not sure, but these military bases could be worse again still.
Well, I also think there's also the historic point. You make some very good points there, Alex, but also about sort of the home of the dam busters being used. That was one of the big controversies in the last Parliament, to be this one. So I think that, no one frankly wants these people here. So it's going to be about sort of making the best of a situation. And all I'll say is it's going to come down to pork barrel politics, where you're going to see a lot of these new places, traditional Tory areas, not necessarily Wiltshire, but other places where they were long-time Conservative areas, which are now Labour MPs. And frankly, I'm sure that despite Rich Orley's promise to get rid of these places by the end of this Parliament, I suspect we're going to have many more months and years of these sort of negotiations and haggling going on.
Now, do you know what this is, James?
A red book?
It is a red book. It's a red book.
Now, is it?
It's got a red book with various books inside it, titled things like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Oh, the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah. So this I carry around in my handbag for when I'm sitting on the tube or stuck at a train station and kind of want to occupy my brain with something, because I think the Word of God is a lovely distraction. But it seems to me, and actually in my transits back to the Great West, I will be traversing through Swindon myself tonight at some point. It seems to me if I dared get this out and potentially read something aloud from it while I'm there, I could end up being snatched by the police. I don't know what you make of this story, but a Christian preacher, and look, let's be clear, Sean O'Sullivan, who is the man who was arrested. Then he was cleared of racial harassment. Oh, sorry, does that make me a waythist? He is the sort of, the end is nigh sandwich board type. I think he goes around with a wooden crucifix and a megaphone. But still, this is a Christian country. And I kind of think that sort of street preaching has been part of our social fabric for so long, whether you're a Christian or any other religion, you got to lump it.
Yeah, I mean, this seems quite an extraordinary case, hasn't it, Alex? It's been dragging on for a number of weeks and months. And I have to say, given the constraints on the CPS, it seems odd they would pursue this persecution and, conviction as well. I think there's been a number of sort of different questions put down in Parliament about it. At one point, it seemed that it was going to be dropped and seems to be back again. I think that until the current kind of legal vacuum is cleaned up, we're going to carry on seeing these kind of court cases happen. And it'll be really interesting as well, because members of the Trump, if not the Trump team, the Trump adjacent team, and certainly JD Vance has lent into this, are keen to sort of make these kind of free speech cases. So if the UK government, which obviously is determined to play its cards over things like Ukraine, etc., wants to exert influence over the White House, they maybe ought to get their own house in order when it comes to things such as free speech.
James, thank you ever so much. It's always wonderful to catch up with you. The glorious James, your Deputy Political Editor. Look, I gave him a promotion there. Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. I'll tell you what, though, as someone who does like the good old Bible, every Christian knows that the coolest people get arrested. Whether you're a disciple, a prophet, John the Baptist, or Jesus Christ himself. Kind of happens if you go around preaching the Word of God. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but when I come back, we're going to be talking more about the migrant story and the fact that these migrants are being given all sorts of freebies, as well as all the other freebies we seem to be able to chuck about with gay abandon, despite the fact, apparently, we've got no money. That's coming up after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. I'm just singing that because I'm very happy. I've got loads of apps on my phone, way too many. I actually organise them into these sorts of huge composite categories to try and create just one home screen, and then I can't remember which particular file I put each app into. But I know where I keep my talkTV app. Oh, yes, I do. It's in my app category called Listen, where I put all sorts of things I like listening to. It could be in Watch, because I've also got one of those. You see the problem? Well, the bigger problem is that I'm going to have to now delete my talkTV app. That's correct. Because it's moving to an even more exciting app that is just called Talk. So if you, like me, like to listen back to all of our programmes or tune in live to our brilliant content via the talkTV app, then you need to know that from Monday, the 1st of December, you have to change that app to the one just called Talk. It's on all the app stores, whether you're on Google or Samsung or iPhone or some other strange thing that they make in China. Knock yourself out. You can download it absolutely anywhere, and you can catch up on all of your favourite programmes. So do not forget, from the 1st of December, the talkTV app is going to go up to the App Store in the sky. Meanwhile, from the cloud, you can download the new one, which is just called Talk. Alrighty, let us talk now to the brilliant Robert Bates from the Centre of Migration Control. Robert, how are you doing, my darling?
I'm very well, thank you, Alex. How are you?
I'm not so bad. Now, how would you fancy, right, if I said to you, Robert, instead of working, you can get out of Britain for a while, because I know you're a bit fed up with this country, aren't we all? And I'm going to put you up, all expenses paid. You're going to get 3 meals a day. It's going to be in a country you've always fancied going to. You're going to get a free phone. You're going to get pocket money. If you like, if you feel like that's not enough and you still want to get a bit more money, don't worry. You can probably go work on the black market doing what you like, pulling a pint here or there. Shh, we won't tell anybody. But even if they know you're doing it, no one's going to pay a slight bit of notice. You can hang out with your mates, play a bit of football, shoot some pool. And when you're fed up with all of that and you want to come home again, we'll put about 10 grand in your pocket to do so. Would you take me up on that offer?
So long as I could have a boogie as well, which of course these individuals that I think you're very tactfully referring to are also able to do on our dime. I think it sounds like a really, really sweet deal, and it's unfortunately something that is not available to very many millions of Brits currently. I think, you know, if you look at actually what's happened with the asylum system, it's become effectively a welfare state for the world at expense and at the cost of the British taxpayer. So I think really this is a situation that's getting far out of hand. And you know, you see in the sort of budget lines, 5 billion a year now going into this. It's not all going actually on those sort of essentials, the accommodation and the food. It's going on kind of the trinkets and the treats. So they're clearly being prepared for those individuals that will be moving soon into the small town of Crowborough, causing huge havoc and social disharmony and against the real wishes of the British public. But nonetheless, our politicians, our political class have deemed it somehow necessary that these individuals are extended every largesse, something that simply we are not extended as citizens of this country.
I mean, let's talk as well about this scheme to move migrants from hotels into disbanded military bases. On the surface of it, you think, OK, the thing is about barracks is a relatively rudimentary accommodation. They are secure. And you can have multiple people in one room, basic facilities. But if it's good enough for our armed forces, surely it's good enough for whichever geezer has decided to try and break into our country, probably from Giza. But the thing is about these military bases is, like you said, they tend to be in parts of the United Kingdom where there probably isn't high immigration, that there probably isn't a great amount of activities to do, so no wonder they need to learn how to, I don't know, do origami or something. But also, this is when people serve in the armed forces and are based in a certain area, they might then end up moving into the community of that area. And I kind of think getting people out of places like Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan, who probably don't have particularly glittering opinions of the UK armed forces, and shoving them in small towns where there are veterans, to me is a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, that's a really good point, actually. And of course, that wouldn't be a concern if the Home Secretary actually showed a bit of mettle, and if they're going to use these bases, put fences around them, make sure that they are very secure, detained facilities that the individuals cannot get out of. I mean, they are erecting fences in Crowborough around the army base, but they're actually doing so for the safety and well-being of those illegal migrants that are going to be moving in, not for the women, children, and as you say, the veterans that live a few miles away or live in the town. And this really is the problem. So I think basically the asylum system has reached a point where they're running out of places to actually put individuals. This is why the hotel problem has gone so large in recent years. But the reason for that is because these individuals have so many legal levers at their disposal, from judicial reviews and human rights claims and all sorts, that they become really, really entrenched for a very long period of time. And if we actually had a system where we aimed to process individuals within 2 weeks and effectively ensure that there was a steady throughput in these facilities, we wouldn't have to stop blighting small towns and villages around the country. And this is actually a situation where I think the misery is going to get a lot worse. The Daily Mail recently did a piece sort of showing where these locations were, and you put your bottom dollar that every single town and village that is about to sort of have this imposition on it has a population of a few thousand at best. I was doing the maths with Crowborough, and I think once this sort of facility is up and running, about every 1 in 20 people living in the area will be an illegal migrant being housed in the estate. And this is just a crazy transformation of a otherwise peaceful, tranquil sort of British town where a lot of people would want to go and retire, or a lot of people would want to go and sort of enjoy luxury of life that frankly is very hard to come by in large parts of Britain at the moment.
I mean, there were a number of people who said, oh, do you know what? You should send these migrants straight to the places where the people who think this is a good idea live. And so, you know, it's a sort of moving people out of the red wall, cheaper hotels where they've been put up so far, and saying, right, why don't you go into the heart of Lib Dem land where people are a lot better off? But I'm against this, and I'll tell you why. Because as somebody spent a lot of time in Wiltshire, and like you said, referring to that Daily Mail article of where has a lot of military bases where migrants could be sent, Wiltshire comes #1 in the list by a stretch. You sort of think, well, you've wrecked all these other parts of the country. Do we really now have to go and wreck the remaining bits? But the other thing, where is Crowborough? I mean, it's in Sussex, isn't it? Whereabouts is it on the coast?
I'm a northerner. You're testing me too much here. My geography of the south is not very good.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
I know it's part of England, and therefore we should be very concerned about it suffering difficulties. And I think you're absolutely right that, you know, spreading the misery effectively isn't really a very good strategy. I mean, it might end up actually radicalising some of those Lib Dem voters that have been far too sheltered from the problems for too long. But in general, I'm generally against those suggestions.
Oh, apparently it's 7 miles west of Tunbridge Wells, Ryan tells me. So that really is sort of putting this into the problem into the middle of leafy Britain. And you kind of think, oh, maybe they'll wake up and they'll learn their lesson and stop voting for this. Of course, the Green Party themselves, the Green Party who want everybody from every war-torn, flea-ridden hellhole on earth to move to the United Kingdom, doesn't want these people in their own constituencies.
So does the Labour government as well. It's important emphasising these safe and legal routes will actually end up as well with a very similar problem. These are going to be open doors, effectively. They're just going to explode beyond recognition and see a huge number of individuals. You know, you think the Home Secretary is saying she's bringing back control, but if she effectively surrenders control of our asylum policy to the UN's High Commissioner for Refugees, he will just keep saying, well, we've got, you know, millions of people on our list that we think are eligible for relocation. You should probably start taking a big chunk of these. So I think people need to really focus that the plans announced last week are dismal for this country.
This is the thing, right? If you actually look at how many nations on earth at the moment are embroiled in some sort of tyranny, in where there are sort of political persecutions, war, conflict, extreme poverty, or where they outlaw homosexuality, which are all immediate, refugee thresholds, which you say you're one of those things and that's it, hurrah, you're in. That's basically every single country on earth, bar the West.
Well, exactly, and this is why what the proposals are, which is effectively saying to the UNHCR, tell us how many you think we should be taking, tell us where from, and we will bend over backwards to accommodate them. It's crazy, and I think basically we're entering a period where more and more of the British public are effectively just saying, no, we've done enough in recent years. Now is the time to just actually start focusing on the issues that affect us in our own country, because our public services are in dismal state. Quality of life is in absolute freefall. We really can't be concerned and having to expend lots of money and emotional and political capital dealing with the fallout of a conflict in the Far East. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to much of the public at this point. I think we have really done enough, and it's time to just start making sure that every single penny of taxpayers' money is used to the betterment of British citizens.
It's a powder keg, and it is going to blow, of that I'm certain, and I don't say that with glee. Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control, thank you ever so much. We're going to take a short break now, but after that, a funny little story from Australia. Requisites with a video, no less. I'm going to be showing you a protest by an Australian senator against burqas in the country, and you'd never guess what she came dressed as. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is talk.
You know, there's something that I really enjoy about this sort of stiff upper lips, tongue-in-cheek Anglo-Saxon response to things. We aren't particularly Gallic in the way that the French go around and like to set fire to cars and wear yellow vests and have fisticuffs with the police. Not really. That's not really our way. Even our former criminals, you know, those people who stole a loaf of bread 200 years ago, who we sent down to Asbo Island, the other side of the world. No. You say to the British, for instance, your flag is racist, then what will the British do? Oh, we'll put our flag everywhere. Does that trigger you? Sorry. You know, if you invent the rules, you've got to live by them. As the old adage goes, you make your bed, you lie in it. Well, it turns out our good cousins in Australia have a similar approach to political protest. Now, one particular Australian senator who goes by the name of Pauline Hanson, no, I don't know her either, but I'm sure people in Australia do. The newspaper says she's far right, which probably means that she doesn't like immigration. Well, she was saying that she'd probably outlaw full face coverings, you know, security issues and integration. Burqas, not really the one, are they? Not the way we do things down under. No. And of course, that is a terrible thing to do. That is racist. That is xenophobic. How dare you suggest that a woman being told that she's got to cover her face because otherwise it's shameful if she gets her peepers out? Oh, how dare you suggest that that doesn't fit in with the psyche of the nation? And so Pauline said, all right then, OK, if you're not going to agree with me that burqas should be banned, guess what I'm going to do? And she didn't, did she? Oh, that's right. She came in to the Australian Senate complete with a burqa. There we go. In she comes. Look at that. Looking like Phantom of the Opera or something. Oh, that one's upset, isn't she? There's a lady in a hijab there who clearly thinks that someone wearing a burqa is really offensive. Oh, but it isn't offensive, is it? No, wearing a burqa is not offensive. That's right. It's a perfectly legitimate cultural expression, apart from this person's not allowed to wear a burqa because, I don't know, freedom of choice. I mean, the thing I like the most is there she goes. She's got a pinza and she's wearing some pretty snatchy high heels, sort of swooping around a bit like a sexy witch, if I'm honest. But I love it. I mean, if you're going to protest against something, that is the way to do it. That has pleased me. It has tickled me right to the core. Because, you know, I remember reading something online the other day, and it was actually from one of the, I think it was from one of the pro-Gaza MPs, where people have been saying, well, we should ban the burqa in the United Kingdom. It's not very good. It doesn't really reflect the way that we think about society, you know, suggesting that a woman should be shamed for showing her hair or her face in public. The fact that she is some sort of temptress, a siren, some sort of evil man brain twister, if she dares go out without dressing like a ghost. And this person had retweeted, somebody said we should ban the burqa, saying, and what has a woman in a burqa ever done to you? Ha! There's a man basically going, oh, and why are you worried about us oppressing women? I mean, why do they not get it? Anyway, all I can say to Pauline Hanson, whatever your politics are in other areas, well done you. Because if you're going to turn around and say that everyone should be allowed to wear burqas, it's freedom of choice, we don't tell people what they should wear, when or how, or what it represents, because that's at the heart of this, isn't it? The fact that women like me think the burqa is a dangerous introduction into Western society because it represents medieval misogynistic attitudes that persecute women, that shame women, that convey the narrative that if a woman isn't fully covered up, she is a hyper-sexualized monster and deserves what's coming to her. And I think that that is a terrible thing to say in a country that had to fight to get the vote. I mean, come on. You know, equal rights and all that, let's bash through the glass ceiling. But burqas, that's OK. No, for me, what the burqa symbolically represents is not welcome here. So either you've got the argument that everyone should be able to wear a burqa and you shouldn't be offended by what it symbolically represents, or you don't, because Pauline put it on and all of a sudden, oh, you can't do that because that symbolically represents racism. That's cultural appropriation. No, well, it's OK for it to symbolically represent something. You can wear it on Halloween as far as I care. On World Book Day, send your kid to school in one. You can't turn around and say burqas are fine, but only for certain people. Either they're fine or they're not fine. It's very simple. So anyway, Pauline Hanson, whoever you may be, I salute you. Right, there you go. I thought that was quite fun. I could look at that video again and again, especially when she sort of stalks across with her legs out. It's not even like a full body covering. It's almost like some sort of back to front veil. Anyway, I doubt she managed to go online to burqasforyou.com and get something in the nick of time to do that political protest. Shall we do some calls now while we've got some time? Let's have a chat with Sarah. And it says next to Sarah's name here in Cape Canaveral, new caller in capital letters, which is always exciting. Hello. Welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, Sarah. How are you?
Hello there, Alex. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, not bad.
Brilliant. Go, Alex. That's all I say when I listen to you. Go, Alex. I agree with everything you say. Basically, my call's about this two-child benefit cap being lifted. I'm absolutely gutted. Honestly, it's just a gateway benefit, isn't it, really? It doesn't end there. It's universal credit. It's extra housing benefit, bigger house, no work for the new mum. Again, can't get back into work because another baby coming along. I work on the front line in a school, and I see it. There's children getting benefit now that don't receive the benefit. They come to school dirty, hungry. You know, what is it coming to? And you just set off to work in the morning and you think, what is it all about? Shafted again by the good old government.
And do you know what really sticks in my craw? It's when the Labour Party have the audacity to say we've all got to be in this together. We've all got to bear some of the burden. You know, the Conservatives mess this up and everybody has to carry an equal weight. Well, they don't, do they? Because people having multiple children who can't afford to have those children aren't carrying the equal weight. I don't see them making sacrifices. I didn't exactly grow up in the world's wealthiest house. You know, parents have to make decisions about what they can afford, including, can we have another baby? And I think the two-child benefit cap is perfectly fine. You'd expect most people to have more than one child, so 2 children. I'm not saying people shouldn't have more than that, but when you start having multiple children, in a lot of households, guess what? Kids have to share rooms. They have hand-me-downs of the older siblings' clothes. You know, if you can't afford it, that is how the system's always worked. And the problem is when you say to people, you don't have to work for what you receive, it inculcates in those people a culture of expectation. Whereas the minute you suddenly take away the ability to get what you want without having to do anything for it, it's amazing how quickly people will abandon the slankets, turn off Netflix and find themselves behind a checkout. Because unless they did that, they wouldn't have 2 pence to rub together. And do you know what? Industry is good for the economy. It's also good for mental health. And so thus we have it. We are now in a cycle of a ridiculous doom loop where it doesn't pay to go to work, it pays to do the opposite.
Absolutely. So where's the incentive to work anymore now when we could have been dragging them back? Because they did stop having them. They have slowed up having them because they thought, well, we only have them for the extra money. Oh, there's no extra money. Oh, we'll make sure we don't have that other one. But what have they done now?
Do you know, this has been a sort of an issue we've been grappling for a long, long time in the United Kingdom. I remember when we had the TV series Benefit Street, and there was this whole idea that you can't shame the white working class and say that they're all lazy. I remember when newspapers used to put a picture of, you know, old Derek on his Zimmer frame claiming his disability benefits and then compare it to the photograph he sent to his friends of, I don't know, going skydiving at the weekend. Quite rightfully, we said that these people are frankly taking the proverbial out of the rest of us who are doing our bit to pay into what is essentially an insurance-based system. So if we fall on hard times, or our relative or our neighbour, that we may help them out. But the thing is now, what you have increasingly is cultures and sort of subsets of people in various communities who actually say that it is in their nature. What they want to do is have as many children as possible and not work for it. And that is what I think is so dangerous, because without sort of making this too much about multiculturalism, we keep being told that actually the birth rate in Europe is vastly declining. So I don't think that this policy is necessarily being set up to help the Brits.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, any decline we did start to see will change now. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I don't know. When people say the reason that people aren't having children is because of economics, because they can't buy a house and this, that and the other, I'm like, that ain't it. You know, I used to live in Africa. People had mud huts and they had a load of children. It isn't about the economy. It's about the decimation of society. It's about the destruction of culture. It's about the erasure of social mores. It's about turning us into a sort of a sad, miserable, instantly gratified nation who've forgotten what our principles are supposed to be. Sarah, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's sneak in one more before we go to the next advert break. This is Steve in Cambridgeshire. Hello there, Steve.
Hello, Alex. My point was, instead of spending all this money on, say, extras for migrants in camps, why don't the government spend the money on security for the people in the towns and protect the people in the towns? Because you know they're going to put them into them camps anyway, you know, the migrants. So why not spend money on extra police or whatever to patrol the community?
I mean, why, if you're in a sort of encampment because you've illegally broken into a country, and remember that, you've illegally broken into a country, as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't be allowed off those camps. I'm not saying they should be treated badly or inhumanely. I'm not saying they should be tortured or put into forced labour or anything like that. But I don't see why, with all the other add-ons that they get, why they're then allowed to have full freedom. Because if other people break the law as egregiously as these people have, and remember, they have paid not just one people trafficker, but probably a lot of people traffickers en route. And people traffickers aren't nice, cuddly people who, in their spare time, are working down your local Oxfam shop. No, these are people connected to international drugs cartels, terrorist organisations. That there are plenty of people in the course of people trafficking who don't make it as far as Calais, because you get people plucked off at every single stage. It's why you don't find a lot of women, because any woman who tries to take that route to get out of her country is likely to be taken into sexual slavery or sold on the black market as a domestic slave. The reason you don't get a lot of teenagers is because for the fate of some teenagers is even worse. And I'm talking about organ harvesting. So anybody willing and canny enough and savvy enough and intrepid enough to actually mix, fraternise and work with some of the most demonic, vicious and violent, evil international criminals at multiple stages and across a continent, they're not cuddly. They're not our poor little victims of the world. And so I don't know why they're not able to either A, fend for themselves, or B, why they're allowed to leave these places, whether it be a hotel or barracks, and just, I don't know, go about with full freedom, because other people who break the law are removed from society. Steve, thank you ever so much. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back after the break, it's my favourite topic on the Trivial Pursuit board. I'm joking. It's sport.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, if I were to have a newspaper and I was reading the front page headline, do you know what you'd be reading? That's right, you'd be reading the sport. And now we're going to do just that.
Sports news from The Sun.
And I'm joined by the fantastic Sean Custis, who is the head of sport, the sort of big cheese in the world of sport at our friends downstairs at The Sun.
Right, yeah.
Now, because I'm sitting in the seat today, I think that things should be done my way, because in my mind, there's no such thing as sport unless there's a significant risk of death or maiming, which is why I like Formula One and rugby. So let's kick off with Formula One, because coming up to the end of the season, 2 races left, and there's been a bit of a twist in the tail, which I think is going to make things a little bit more exciting than perhaps we predicted.
Yes, I heard you were a big F1 fan, and I saw you getting wound up before the break there, but were you as wound up before the break as you were yesterday when you saw that Lando Norris had been disqualified? Because there was no indication that that was going to happen as he crossed the line. You know, second place, everything looked good going into the last 2 races. Still does. He's got a 24-point lead. And I think when you're ending up getting disqualified 4 hours after the race and you've been on the podium, and it's all a bit flat, isn't it? And it's really not ideal. Plus, people don't really understand he's been disqualified for what? The skid block being a millimetre too small.
Yeah, most people are like, what even is a skid block?
What is a skid block? I thought somebody might bring one out. I didn't see one yesterday, what it looks like. And a millimetre? Big deal.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently
I suppose,
it is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, on one side, people would say, well, if you don't have these limitations in place in Formula One, although I kind of prefer the days when you could roll out a Tyrrell with 6 wheels and people are like, that's cool.
I
Do you remember
love
that?
the 6-wheeler, yes.
The 6-wheeler?
I had it on my scale
Can you
track,
imagine?
the Tyrrell 6-wheeler.
Yeah, the FIA would be having chickens right now if that was allowed.
The little 6-wheeler for Scale Extric. He was
It was
very proud of it.
very
Didn't last for long, the 6-wheeler.
But now, you know, of course, all the cars have to be homogenised, which means they can't overtake, etc., etc. But this isn't the first time the FIA have come up with a sort of ruling or regulation that seems to play into the hands of one young Mr. Verstappen.
Yeah, he does get the breaks. He had the famous one a few years ago when well, it resulted in the sacking of the ref, didn't it? In effect, and he won the title. But when you've got Verstappen, as Norris now has, in your rearview mirror, and you know Red Bull are winding Norris up a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're coming to get you. 24 points. 24 points, big margin. It's 25 for a win.
Yes,
but sprint races at the weekend, you get 8 points for sprint races at the weekend as well.
It only takes Lando Norris to have a DNF and Verstappen to win the race, which if Lando Norris has had a DNF, because Oscar Piastri seems to have checked out. I don't know what's happened to him. He's gone. He's done a Vettel, hasn't he? He's been like in the lead all the way through the season and halfway through suddenly gone, oh, do you know what? I'm going to mess it all up from here on in.
Well, apparently Qatar favours Norris and Piastri. It's a track that favours them.
Oh,
so
really?
Right, as does Abu Dhabi at the end. So they're still very much in the box seat.
At least, I must say, it hasn't been brilliant for on-track action this season, as it hasn't been for multiple seasons, but it's quite nice to see a title race going down to the wire, even though I don't like the fact that, here we go, Max has benefited again, and I did feel very sorry for Lando Norris with this disqualification, but he's a chipper young man. He takes things in his stride, but there is part of me that enjoys the fact that it's like, woo, you know, the big bad wolf is at the door again. That it does give you that sort of sense of thrill.
Yeah, indeed it does. However, did you feel sorry for Tottenham yesterday? Do you even know that Tottenham lost to Arsenal in the North London derby? Yeah. 4-1 to Arsenal yesterday.
The last time I heard something about Tottenham was when I was a kid and my brother supported them and Gary Lineker was still playing for them.
Good grief, you're going back a bit.
I know.
That's a long way.
It's a long way.
Anyway, Arsenal fans very thrilled by the fact Eberechi Eze got a hat-trick. Arsenal serenely move on. Lead comfortably in the title race. They got Bayern Munich in the Champions League during the week. That'll be a good one. They're fighting on a lot of fronts this season and they look like they've got the squad that's equipped to do it. But weirdly, tonight, one threw a spanner in the works for Arsenal, but Man United play tonight, home to Everton. And if they won, Man United, they could end up in the top 4, which seemed incomprehensible.
Oh my God,
they're
not winning everything? When did that stop happening?
Well,
when did Ryan Giggs leave?
They've had a run of 5 games where they haven't lost. They've drawn their last 2, but they won their 3 before that. And they're on a bit of a roll now after all their trials and tribulations. And to see if Man United got in the top 4 tonight, that would be quite something, really, given all the mess they've been in. And suddenly we might have to wake up and say...
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, tonight. They'll win tonight, I think. I think Man United are starting to get into a bit of form, and Everton are just Everton. They're not really serious challengers for the top 4, but they won't get relegated either.
You know what happens when journalists come on air and make predictions?
Yeah, I know. I can see the danger, and you never know, really, with the way Man United have been the last few seasons, but they do seem to be getting there very gradually.
Well, there you go. All of you fans of the non-odd-shaped ball, do enjoy the football. Thank you ever so much, Sean Custis, Head of Sport of the Sun, for coming in and praising me for all of my lack of knowledge when it comes to football. But thank you for also entertaining me, allowing me to talk about Formula One, which I don't often get to do in this seat. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because we're going to be going back to the news just after this. We're going to be discussing the top stories with the wonderful Mark Littlewood. I'll see you on the other side.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk
there, and welcome back. It's the final hour of the show. I've really enjoyed the first 2 hours. Thank you so much for your company. If you have been with me for the full 2 hours, I'm going to send you a sort of virtual certificate right now. Here we go. It's in the post. Congratulations for being a loyal and diehard fan of Talk. If you've only just joined us, where have you been? You've missed 2 brilliantly, voluptuously packed full of news hours. But you can go back and watch it from the start on YouTube or on our app. And wait for a segue. This is why they pay me the small pounds, because if you are someone who likes to catch up on our programmes on the Talk TV app, I'm afraid to tell you, it's going to be making its way up the golden staircase to the little app cemetery in the sky. But fear not, because it's going to have a brilliant replacement. For Monday the 1st of December, we're going to be now hosting all of your favourite shows on the Talk app. So your Talk TV app is going to, I don't know, lose its TV, then it's going to re-manifest called Talk, and it's going to be even bigger and better than before, and you can download it whatever kind of handset you use. So whether you're one of those boring, don't realise that other people make phones other than Apple, it's in the Apple Store. If you're one of those cool Samsung users like me, because guess what? Samsung phones can actually open like this. Woohoo! It's in the Google Play Store. And if you have one of those cheaper handsets from China, it's whatever app store that you use. It's everywhere available. So from the 1st of December, do download the Talk app so you never have to miss a little bit of anything that you enjoy. Now, talking about missing things, while I've been on air, my eyes have been diverted up to the screens here where we look at what's going on other channels. And both Sky and the BBC have been rolling on what looks like a very boring hearing in Parliament, in the Committee for Media, Sports and whatever it's called, Culture, Media and Sport, because they're grilling various characters over what life is like inside the BBC. And as oh, well, it's a bit boring, isn't it? This comes, of course, after both Panorama and Newsnight were done for splicing together chunks of Donald Trump's speech back at the end of Trump 1.0, which they say led to the riots on Capitol Hill. Turns out they used bits of the speech from time codes so far apart and put them together as if that's what he actually said. That is called fraud, my friends. And of course, Donald Trump said, right, we're going to sue the BBC for billions of dollars, and really wanted to call them to heel. And he's had success in the past with doing that to American channels. Well, as you would expect, the BBC then had to see a bit of a bloodletting. So Tim Davie left as the Director General. Deborah Turness, the head of news, she also had to go. And everyone's going, do you know what the problem is? It is institutionally biased. If you look at reports into favourability of Hamas and Gaza, in the fetishised war over there in the Middle East where Israel's always the enemy, if you look at how they balance out politics, Brexit, doom, gloom, apocalypse, syphilis spreading across the land, the sky's going to fall in, Remain, it's so nice, the European Union, it's like just one big giant festival of multiculturalism. Of course the BBC is institutionally biased, and they are being grilled right now over in Parliament. But get this right. So apparently, according to Mr. Shah, who is currently the something or the other, Ryan's going to remind me in my ear, the chairman, that's right. It's one of those things where you've got a director general, a chairman, a board, the board of directors, the director of the, it's like, come on. Anyway, he is the BBC chairman, and he's been telling the committee that there is actually a plausible case for splicing the Donald Trump speech together on Panorama. Really? A plausible case for basically fabricating what the leader of the free world said. And you say they're not institutionally biased. The bit that cracks me up the most, though, so a guy called Michael Prescott, who was an external advisor to the BBC on their editorial standards committee, he was the one who leaked that things were going on, saying, look, this ain't right. If we're talking about basics of journalism, the 101 of actually reporting on fact, not being partisan, making sure you're not feeding people a load of fibs, I'm afraid the BBC ain't really living up to its expectations. And so everyone went, yes, we know the BBC is basically the kumbaya of communists. And then what I found was so funny is that all the left go, this is terrible. We must get rid of Sir Robbie Gibb. He's the problem. Sir Robbie Gibb, who used to be the head of BBC Westminster, who then went to work for Theresa May as Director of Communications in number 10 Downing Street. Well, he's the one who's got to go. He's the wicked wolf among a bunch of do-gooders. Why? Why might that be? Well, guess what? Robbie Gibb's an actual Brexiteer. He's the only blimmin' one at the BBC. And when it turns out that BBC's institutionally biased, all the lefties are calling for his head. Make that make sense. Anyway, he is there being dragged in front of the committee. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Let's speak now to somebody who knows Sir Robbie very well. As do I, actually. He's a good mate of mine. But this is Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. I mean, you know, for those of us who have a little bit of knowledge about the world inside politics and the BBC and media and so on and so forth, out of all the sensible people at the BBC who really do believe in impartiality and balance and have continued to work at Armty, despite no doubt knowing that it has its problems, Sir Robbie's the very person you'd want to be taken over from Sir Tim Davies, surely, not asking him to go.
Well, Alex, I think you're right. It's not often that I sit down and watch the best part of 2 hours of select committee hearings, but I have done that this afternoon with regard to the BBC hearings, and it was a fairly unedifying experience. I'm afraid this select committee are asking mainly all of the wrong questions. There was a great fascination in what Robbie Gibb's politics were. He pointed out that he had worked for Theresa May's government for 2 years, but he's been a journalist and working for the BBC for 25. The idea that the problem is Sir Robbie Gibb, when you've got not just this Trump issue, but a whole range of others on your hands, is shocking. It's a deflection tactic from people desperately trying to defend the BBC or trying to keep it alive after the innumerable missteps that it's made. And you know, what we got to get to the bottom of, really, is why does the BBC continually put out material that appears to be biased in one direction? This can't really be mistake, can it? So there's something going on there. You can call it institutional bias. You can call it a hive mind, but it always seems to tilt in the same way. If errors were being made, you'd expect them to be evenly sprinkled. Sometimes they would say something that was too pro-Israel or too pro-Trump. But no, all of the errors seem to be sprinkled on one side of the ledger. And I'm afraid from what I've heard so far, the Select Committee don't seem to be particularly interested in getting to the bottom of that. They're more interested in asking the senior BBC non-execs, sort of, why didn't you apologise faster, or why didn't you respond more quickly, or who runs your comms strategy, all of which is potentially interesting for those in the guts of the BBC, but doesn't address the central point. Why has our public broadcaster gone so enormously off the rails?
I mean, the whistleblower who started this whole conversation, Michael Prescott, has himself appeared before the committee. Let's have a little listen to hear what he had to say.
In her resignation statement, Deborah Turner said that the recent allegations that the BBC News is institutionally biased are wrong. Do you think the BBC is institutionally biased?
No, I don't, and I'm sure someone's going to correct me pretty quickly if I'm wrong, but I just reread the memo yet again outside the door here. I don't think I used that phrase anywhere in the memo, and I do not think it's institutionally biased.
Hang on. You leaked all this stuff pointing out that it's splicing together Trump clips and it's over-reporting on, you know, Hamas in a sort of favourable way, and you don't think it's institutionally biased? Why can't people just turn around and go, look, we know there's a problem here. If we're going to... Because I'm going to be honest with you, I think we might disagree on this, but I'm not sure. I'm not one who wants to scrap the BBC. I'm not one who wants to scrap the licence fee, which kind of puts me a little bit at odds with most of the people in my political tribe. I think it should be brought right down in size. I really do. I think that it's egregious that it costs about, 3 times more than Netflix at present. I also think that the BBC need to stay in their lane, and by that I mean it should be making public service broadcasting. It should focus on news, not suddenly go, oh, now we haven't got as much money, let's get rid of the domestic UK news channel. That, to me, was farcical. It needs to get out of the independent media space. I do not believe the BBC should be filling up BBC Sounds with blimmin' podcasts. If washed-up has-been celebrities want to make a podcast, they can buy a Yeti mic, put some interesting trinkets on their bookshelf, get an Osmo camera and upload it straight to YouTube, like the rest of us. Because I actually think that the BBC, if it worked correctly, is potentially an asset, particularly when it comes to soft power around the world. And yet it does seem to me beyond the pale. It seems to me that we cannot rescue it. But we're not having that conversation. The conversation is either lurching towards, every time we start to get close to having that chat, oh, it's too right-wing. Excuse me? The BBC? Too right-wing? We've got to get rid of Sir Robbie Gibb? That is madness. Or it veers completely in the opposite direction, so we've got to get rid of it altogether. Why is it that the corporation can't just say, do you know what? We make people sit there when they work at the BBC, as I did myself. I'm a former BBC trainee. And I can tell you right now, when you're a producer at the BBC, when a guest comes on, or at least you had to back when I was there, you had to fill out an online form for every guest saying what their sexuality was, what the colour of the skin was, what the religion was, what the gender was, what the age was. So all of this could be tabulated. So by the end of every month, you could give yourself a pat on the back for not being a racist, basically. If the BBC are able to do that for every single contributor, and especially now we've got modern technology, why on earth can't they go, do you know what, it's so important that we're impartial. We're going to harness something like AI to real-time monitor our output and look at our headlines and make sure that the needle is directly in the middle. Instead, it can't even have that conversation. Why?
Well, I mean, I do disagree with some of what you've said, Alex. I mean, I think the BBC is just now out of time and out of date. There was a point in time in which, you know, most of us had to rely on the BBC to actually get news. What had happened somewhere? You would tune into the BBC, radio or television. You would wait till 6 o'clock in the evening or the 9 o'clock news when I was a boy to tune in to find out what had happened in the world. There was no other way of doing it. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have X. We didn't have a plethora of different channels like Talk pumping out information and analysing it. So its role might have been unique and precious, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but is certainly no longer unique, and therefore I doubt it's precious. I also think the nature of things is the idea, I think, that any particular media outlet can be completely neutral, impartial and objective if you are simply looking to report the facts without any colour to it at all. Go and work for the Press Association or Reuters, who simply give the facts of the case, what has happened somewhere. If you want to give any colour to that, any description, any debate around it, any spin-off documentaries about what's going on in the world, I think it's almost inevitable that there will be an editorial bias, even if subconscious. I'm not suggesting there's some grand conspiracy here. It's just that birds of a feather flock together. And it tends to therefore be the case that the BBC reflects typically sort of metropolitan lefty liberal values. Now, I haven't got a problem with there being a metropolitan lefty liberal news channel, radio station or series of podcasts. I do have a problem being forced to pay the best part of 180 quid for it under pain of criminal conviction. So if we want to save the BBC, I think the best way to do that is to move it onto a voluntary subscription. I hear from defenders of the BBC that it's widely trusted right across the globe, not just in Britain, that it's the go-to for so many people, that it's adored widely. Well, it should be easy to get the money to roll in then, I would suggest. It should be easy to persuade people to perhaps not renew their Netflix subscription and to renew their BBC subscription instead. But I don't see any case for them domestically not competing with the rest of the open market. The idea that they should be given a special precept is crazy. On the soft power element, well, fine. If there's a case that we need BBC English language broadcasting beamed into some of the poorer or more distressed parts of the world that can't pay for it as part of our Foreign Office efforts or our Ministry of Defence efforts, well, that's fine. But that's a Ministry of Defence Foreign Office budget. It's not a bill for 175 quid a year for owning a television set.
Well, very fair points, I'd say, Mark. Now, let's talk about Kevin Hollinrake. Because I expect the mad short fringe nutters with socialist workers placards to call everybody a Nazi and a fascist and think that's fine, which it isn't. I am absolutely... this has got to stop. It's got to stop because it is so insulting to the millions of people who either were exterminated by the Nazis in their death camps or laid down their lives to try and stop it. It's not funny to use that word. It's dangerous to use that word, because what you're doing is suggesting that somebody is that evil and that much of an existential threat that therefore it would be justifiable to use any means to stop them. And it's just cheap and pathetic. And I kind of expect it from the great unwashed quinoa-eating weirdos who seem to be the ones carrying refugees' welcome signs. I don't expect it from the chairman of the Conservative Party. And yet, when Nigel Farage put out whatever that is, some sort of post on X saying coming soon and a picture of some gold medallion thingy, I don't know, maybe it's to put in your shopping trolley, but whatever that thing is, who knows, but it's coming soon. Kevin Hollingrake retweeted it with a link to a Wikipedia page about the Golden Party badge, which was something Hitler used to dole out to the first 100,000 members of the Nazi Party. He then, I think, saw fit to delete the post and at some point had a sort of change of heart and put it back up again. Has he been drinking the Kool-Aid?
I can't explain his behaviour. I find it absolutely staggering, and I'm enormously disappointed that the Conservative Party has doubled down on his behaviour rather than sought to correct it. No, I'm quite forgiving if somebody makes a kind of post on social media that goes wrong or doesn't land. Oftentimes these things are posted in sort of haste, and something that you might think was funny or witty at the time turns out not to be. I'm not saying that should be career-ending. I agree with you that it is offensive and just stupid to suggest that Reform UK is the sort of modern British equivalent of the Nazi Party. Nigel Farage is not a racist, not a fascist, not a Nazi in any way whatsoever. It's lazy and it's boring and it is offensive. More worryingly, I think it speaks to the Conservative Party having run out of ideas. If their concept, if the chairman of the Conservative Party believes that the way to drag the Conservative Party off the floor and rebuild its support from historically low levels, having apparently lost a massive chunk of its support and active membership to Reform UK, is to point at Nigel Farage and the Reform Party and liken them to the German Nazis. This is the most ludicrous strategy I've ever come across. That is certain to keep the Conservative Party on the floor. So the big offence for me as a member of the Conservative Party isn't, has he offended people? Is it going to cause violence? Is it unfunny? It's that it speaks to complete idiocy on the part of the Conservative Party, that is any sort of plan to rebuild the Conservative Party whatsoever. You rightly imply, Alex, or I infer, that it links the Conservative Party with the sort of ludicrous left who think that everybody they don't like is Adolf Hitler. And the chairman of the Conservative Party has sort of lent into that narrative. Absolutely bizarre. I think it's ludicrous that he hasn't at least received a slap on the wrist, possibly worse. And I think that tweet is still up. The Conservative Party and Kevin should be extremely embarrassed about
do you think they should make him step down from the role?
I think that's probably the right penalty, or at least apologise. Some discussion and rumours have been going around that his account is run by staffers at Conservative HQ, so I don't know to what extent he's contracted out his own account. I can't speak to that, but it's possible. So it's not necessarily a hanging offence, but I would say what's completely shocked and appalled me is the reaction to it, that it hasn't been deleted, there hasn't been an apology. I have not seen Kemi Badenoch's interview about this, but I understand she appeared on television earlier saying, oh, it was just a sort of jolly jest, really, nothing to see here. And I think that is a wholly inadequate response, not because I'm mortally offended, I've got a pretty thick skin, but because it speaks to strategic stupidity.
It also, to me, suggests that it suggests to me this man isn't serious. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's got the priorities of a sado 14-year-old girl who's like, oh, I bet no one else has made this comparison. If I put this up, it's going to get thousands of likes. Oh, it might go viral. I mean, what are you? You're supposed to be the chairman of the Conservative Party and a serious politician. Oh, I want to put something that's going to go big on X.
Yeah. And, it has gone big, but not in the way that he had hoped and anticipated, right? I mean, if we're going to get into the scenario in which any gold badge, suggests that you've got some connection with the German Nazi Party, I mean, we're going to start calling out, Olympic medalists and the like. I mean, you showed the image on screen, Alex, but this is a sort of bronzy, goldy badge, which I presume Reform are going to give out to members who, I don't know, are part of the next wave of joining or perhaps pay a slightly higher membership fee. That's my best guess. The idea that has any comparison to a badge that looks completely different that happened to be issued by Adolf Hitler back in the 30s is absolutely absurd. It's worth scrolling through social media now. You'll find plenty of gold badges over many decades that were issued by the Conservative Party to members. It's mad. This pointing at everything, shouting at it and comparing it to Hitler because you don't like it, and the completely baseless grounds of comparing Reform UK to the hard right. Absolute nonsense, stupid, an error. It's been compounded by there not being an apology. And I'm afraid it shows the Conservative Party in an incredibly unedifying light. I'm pretty ashamed by it.
To tell you what, though, the Reform Party are probably loving Kevin Hollinrake right now, because whatever that gold thingamajig is, we all want to know now, don't we? Brilliant free advertising. Finally, before I let you go, let's talk about this story concerns me deeply. It's about a Christian street preacher called Sean O'Sullivan, who was arrested in Swindon because he was saying God bless you to Muslims at a pro-Palestine march. Now, this guy has a bit of a track record for going around with a megaphone and a giant wooden crucifix or some such. He's one of those sorts of... I don't know him, so maybe I don't want to be rude, especially as a fellow Christian. But it strikes me he might be somewhere nearing the sort of sandwich board, the end is nigh type evangelical, which is fine because as far as I'm concerned, they've for a long time been part of the social fabric of the United Kingdom. Where have they gone? They've gone because they'd be arrested if they did that now. But what concerns me, Mark, is this. Week after week after week after week after week after week, we see pro-Palestine marches. Or before that, actually, we had outright Islamist marches or people marching against the war in Iraq and Afghanistan who would be shouting, I mean, Allahu Akbar. If you want to shout that, fine. It just means God is great. It would spook me if someone shouted it when I was commuting home on the train later, not going to lie. But you know, we live in a free speech society. But we have had people shouting things on those marches, which, as we know, because it's a sort of very laboured point, are actually calling for the destruction of the Jewish state, and possibly worse. And what concerns me is this is supposed to be a Christian nation. I am a Christian. I have my Bible, which I'm going to be tucking into on my commute home because I quite like reading what God has to say on matters. And if we live in a Christian country where a Christian cannot be overtly a Christian, and at the end of the day, that's what this comes down to, we're in a pretty dark place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I have read through the reports of the case, but obviously you only get a kind of potted description. So saying God bless you to people or God bless the Jews and the Palestinians, I think he said, none of this on the face of it looks remotely offensive. I suppose you'd need to know the precise details, that potentially sort of shouting that into someone's face might be a public order offence rather than just bellowing it from the other side of the street down a megaphone. So there's quite a lot of context that matters. But yet again, Plod seems to have got this completely wrong, right? I mean, he's been arrested and charged numerous times, but I think on the last time he was acquitted by a jury in 90 minutes, which included their own lunch break. So thank God we've still got jury trial here. That's where the common sense kicks into our crime and justice system when 12 good men, women and true are asked to deliberate. So we've got ourselves into this unbelievable situation where distress and offence taken by anyone, but particularly by a minority, seem to be the basis for policing. And I actually don't think that causing offence, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it as a way of going about your life, but I don't think it's a matter for the cops and the courts. I don't think you have a right not to be offended. You do have a right not to be distressed. But a fairly high bar on that,
the discussion about the free speech and not being offended, I totally agree with it. But for me, the bit that sends a chill down my spine about this is the fact that there's a different set of rules for Christians. Yeah. And it's not just, it's not like there's a different set of rules for Muslims, because I think there are. But I'm pretty sure if this person, if it was a Hare Krishna, OK, they don't exactly creep along quietly. They have cool hairstyles, bright orange robes and bang a load of drums and go down the middle of Oxford Street. I personally love them. More of them, please. But if it was any other religion, it would be an expression of religious freedom. It's specifically anti-Christian over and over again. And we're supposed to be a Christian country. Do you know, when I was getting on the train yesterday, I changed at Swindon, where this man happens to have been arrested. And as I got onto my connecting train, I looked down the carriage and there was a reverend with a dog collar. And so I immediately thought, brilliant, I want to go and sit opposite him. It was Sunday after all, and it was lovely. We spoke about church, we spoke about all sorts of things. But then I think to myself, that poor man, if we continue going down the direction we're going in, is going to get to the stage he's either going to be arrested or stabbed. That's what concerns me. Mark, I've got to let you go, actually. It is break time over here at Talk Towers, but thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. He's fantastic, the Director of Popular Conservatism, Mark Littlewood. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we're actually going to be dealing with a very sensitive topic. We're beginning to hear the testimonies of what went on to the hostages that Hamas cruelly kept in tunnels, in accommodation is putting it mildly, for 2 years, and how they were treated. We've heard some of the accounts of women and what they had to suffer at the hands of their captors, but there's something really chilling about the reports coming out now from some of the male hostages and some of the sickening abuse they had to endure. So if there are going to be kids listening, perhaps tell them to go and buy a Freddo down the local shop, because it is going to be relatively adult content when we're back after the break.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, hello, welcome back to the programme. as I teased before the break, we are going to be discussing something quite sensitive now, so it would be remiss if I did not suggest that if you happen to have little ones in earshot, that perhaps you should go and send them off somewhere else. I'm joined by Will Geddes, who is a security expert. Now, Will, very difficult to talk about something even at this time of day, but essentially what we are now finding out is returned Israeli hostages, and we're talking about male hostages here, have been giving testimonies of some of the horrific things that happened to them in captivity, the assault they suffered at the hands of Hamas in Gaza. One particular hostage, Guy Dalal Gilboa, who was released as part of last month's ceasefire deal, said his captor suggested they make a porn film together, that he was sexually abused, that he was held at gunpoint, knife point, threatened with violence if he told anybody about the sexual assaults. We also learnt from another former hostage, Ron Brazlovsky, quite what he had to endure while being held hostage by Hamas, that he was repeatedly whipped, he was tortured for 20 minutes, 7 times a day. They beat him so hard that they actually bent a metal pole. And that, again, he finds it very difficult to talk about, particularly the extreme sexual assaults that he had to endure while being held hostage. And in fact, some of these hostages saying that, you know, they'd say things like, you know, you're a Muslim, homosexuality is wrong according to you, isn't it? Or even considered converting to Islam just to try and not be beaten or not be sexually abused. It doesn't surprise me that acts of humiliation took place. I mean, there's another detail here that a hostage has said that they had a mask put on them, was told to get on all fours and bark like a dog, and was beaten and punched. It doesn't surprise me, and yet, you know, we hear all the time, don't we, that, oh, Israel's committing war crimes. That is a war crime. It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's horrific, Alex. There's no easy way to address this, but I think it is important to highlight. It is exceptionally important to highlight. We know from some 1,500 testimonies that have been provided by hostages and even those that were at the Nova Festival and at some of the kibbutzes and certainly at some of the military bases, that sexual violence was used as a determined and premeditated weapon against those individuals. Now, I know that you've seen the 47-minute video. I have too, and it makes for horrific viewing. And I've seen some horrific stuff in my time from working in conflict zones around the world. But what we see here is not conventional combatants. This is not military combatants. These are terrorists. I've even dealt with hostages who have been kidnapped, and they will be treated reasonably well, albeit in terrible conditions. But what we're determining here, certainly from testimonials and accounts coming from some of those hostages, and let's bear in mind here, Alex, these are only the ones that are going to be willing to talk about it. There are going to be many who will be suffering such severe trauma, they are just going to be trying to block it out. They're not going to want to discuss it, not even with their friends and family.
Do you know, it's funny, I was just thinking back, I've been feeling really rubbish actually the last month, and I wonder if part of that is still a reaction to watching that video, because, you know, when you go to the IDF headquarters and you see the unedited footage, they have psychologists on hand. You're allowed to walk out, you don't have to watch it, and I thought, no, I need to know what goes on. I need to actually have the full picture. And again, if children are listening, please do take extra care right now, because I'm going to loosely talk about some of the things that I saw in that footage. Sexual assault and rape, just used as an act of humiliation and violence, disembowelments and mutilations. Hamas leaders saying to their combatants, chop off heads and bring them back to the streets of Gaza for the people to play with, and pretty graphic video of using knives ill-equipped for that particular job. Calls to bring people back to be crucified in the public square. The reason these details and this information is so important is because it seems to me a lot of the world have lost their minds when it comes to Hamas. That people think that Hamas are just simple freedom fighters, that these are just, you know, people who want their own little bit of land to the west of Israel to live happily ever after. Or perhaps even that, even if it's the case that they don't want just their little bit of land, but more than that, what a lot of the world seems to have completely failed to understand or is willfully oblivious to is that, frankly speaking, I'd say the vast majority, if not each and every single person who crossed the border from Gaza into Israel on October the 7th acted with the sort of inhumane wickedness, the sort of level of evil that you expect of the most sadistic serial killers. That these weren't just people who were like, we want to push for a political agenda. They took delight. I remember asking during that briefing, is it true that the soldiers were given drugs to make them be able to go and do these things, these horrific acts? They didn't find a trace of any illegal drugs in the bloodstreams of any of the soldiers that they managed to capture or kill. What they did find on a lot of these young men were bottles of perfume, because they thought if they were going to martyr themselves, they'd better make sure they're ready for the 72 virgins in the afterlife.
I think also what's important to highlight here, Alex, and I think the world has been somewhat blinded to this, is that it wasn't just members of Hamas who crossed the border into Israel to carry out these attacks. There were general members of the Palestinian public who also participated. The first wave was conducted by Hamas soldiers and militants. And then beyond that point, when it was actually kind of made safe, so to speak, then there were members of the Palestinian population who came over and also participated in atrocities. Now, these were attacks that were undertaken and committed against not only the young people that were at the Nova Festival, this music festival, but families who were actually in their own homes, in their private residences, soldiers who were in outposts, who were overwhelmed by Hamas fighters, and then the subsequent members of Palestinian population came and joined in. And there were, beyond that, individuals back in Palestine cheering them on. And as you know, certainly from the briefing that you received, and certainly from the intelligence that I've received, there are so many communication intercepts of individuals with their cell phones who were carrying out these atrocities, boasting about it to not only their friends, but to their families as well.
Little kids in baby grows. Little kids in baby grows. Do you know what? Sometimes I wish I'd never seen that video, but you know, it's so important that I did, because it wasn't my family. But if you don't understand the depths to which your enemies can sink, it could be yours. That's what I think the warning to the West is. Will, thank you ever so much. The fantastic Will Geddes. He's basically our in-house security expert, isn't he? I don't know how he ever has the time to get on with doing other things. Right, while I compose myself, we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, I'm going to be updating you as to what the front page of The Sun's going to look like, what the big political stories are going to be in tomorrow's edition with the Night News editor, John Lucas. So don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Thankfully, the brilliant night news editor of The Sun, John Lucas, has just come into the studio and put a big smile on my face. You've cheered me up. I was getting a bit emotion the previous segment. I have a feeling you're going to wipe the smile off my face, considering I can see on my little cheat sheet here that the very first story is the budget.
Yeah, well, it's going to wipe the smile off of a large segment of the population this week, we suspect. When Rachel Reeves delivers this budget, we were talking about this the other day because she sort of warmed us all up, put it that way, with this speech that she made, early morning speech she made a couple of weeks ago, where she warned that we've all got to do our part to help plug
Basically,
this.
it was a speech saying, none of it's going to be my fault. In advance of time, you're not going to like it, but it's not my fault.
Yeah, it was a £20 billion black hole that she's got to plug, and there's going to be tax increases. They might be sort of a bit sneaky. But one thing we're hoping at The Sun, we've had this very long-running campaign to keep fuel duty down. For 15 years we've been able to do it. It's the Keep It Down campaign. The spending watchdog has estimated we've saved drivers about £100 billion with this campaign. We hope that doesn't change. There's this idea that electric car drivers are going to be hit with this pay-as-you-go.
Yeah.
How they'll implement that, I don't know, but it will be interesting. But also, we've got new figures today and these are embargoed till 5. I'm sure people will be talking about it this evening, from the Centre for Social Justice, talking about the number of people now on benefits with no requirement to work. So we're going to have all this in the paper, all the detail on it, but we're up to 5 million people, and it's a combination of 4 million on universal credit and another million or so on receiving employment and support allowance. Within this, there's a rise of children in households where with jobless parents, so that's gone up by 180,000 to 1.5 million. And how we know that this is
180,000 to 1.5 million.
So 1.5 million.
180,000 to 1.5 million.
Yeah, this is kids in jobless households. And how we know this isn't normal is before the pandemic, we were at about 2.5 million on these benefits. We're now up to 5 million, so it's doubled in 5 years. Ian Duncan Smith spoken to us today, obviously former welfare secretary, so he knows what he's talking about. And what he's saying is during the pandemic, a lot of rules and regulations were relaxed because obviously things did need to be made slightly easier at that time. But the problem is those changes haven't been rolled back. And
I think, frankly, the pandemic also made people girt lazy. As far as I'm concerned, there are a load of people who sat there getting cash for nothing and thought, I rather like this way of life. It seems to me that one of the approaches that the Treasury seems to be taking is flying various things like up a flagpole and seeing which way the wind is blowing, because it seems they've been using the media leaks here and there to sort of put out little sort of trinkets that might appear in the budget to see how their backbenchers will react, to see what sort of headlines it will generate. But unfortunately, everything they've sort of, snuck out by the back door has received, rightfully so, a raft of criticism. And the bit that really sticks in my craw, as you said, she keeps banging on that, we're in such a mess, we're in the economic doldrums. But, I'm going to increase welfare payments and it's going to cost 15 billion. Mate, we can't afford it. Since 6 o'clock, it's been charity hour, ladies and gentlemen. I've been working to pay for Mohammed in a hotel and, some with 7 kids in a mansion in London when I've only just got on the housing ladder myself at the grand old age of 41, 1,000 miles outside of London. It ain't fair. Let's talk about, we're back to football, are we? One of my favourite topics. Tell me about this, I get this. It's the amount of money you have to pay to watch sport on Telebox now.
It's another story about
That's crazy
money.
town.
Okay, this isn't the government's fault, I guess. But if you want to follow your team potentially across all competitions now, watch them on the TV, you have to fork out £1,254.50 across 5 different subscriptions, including the BBC licence fee if you want to watch the FA Cup and League Cup games. Now, that's very expensive just in itself, but you compare to compare this to what European fans get to pay.
Yeah, what is that?
So if you're in Spain, you'll just have one package, £109. It's going to cost you. Australia, £114.
And what, you get all the sports channels included?
You'll be able to watch all the football, your team's competitions, basically. So that's what we're paying, and they've gone back to 2015. So the cost back then was £798. So we've gone up by 73% in a decade.
This is crazy. I mean, look, I don't watch football because I'm a well-educated West Country girl. Because I know that the best sport has a funny-shaped ball and has real risk of death and maiming.
I was going to
like
say,
all
what
good
would be
sports.
your local team then?
I'm from Gloucester, and if I didn't like rugby, they would chase me out of the city with a pitchfork.
Okay.
But no, my big love is actually Formula One, and it sticks in my core that in many countries of the world you can watch the Grand Prix on free to view.
Yeah.
And I have to not just not just if I want to do pay per race, but have a sports package which involves a load of weird stuff that I don't want to watch.
Yeah, well, we're being completely ripped off. I mean, it used to just be. People got very frustrated because Sky had the monopoly on it.
Yeah.
Now it's actually worse because you've got Sky, you've got TNT, you've got Amazon, you've got Now, and if you really want to watch the football, you've got to get all of these channels, and the pubs obviously have been hammered by Sky and the other companies. So you can't even just go down to your local half the time to watch it.
Listen, we've got to get these last two quite quickly, apparently, because I dither and I overspend my time. But so I snort laugh then, because I just envisioned what's going to happen with this. The BBC are rebooting Grange Hill. Oh my goodness, that's going to be you're going to have 1,000 trans kids in the school and some sort of racist teacher and some safe space and I don't know, that's just going to be a dumpster fire, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's going to be a dumpster fire.
Grange Hill is in development, so it was scrapped 17 years ago. It's a bit of a trend. We keep seeing these shows coming back. Adrian Mole is going to be updated for the modern era. Biker Grove.
That's the most politically incorrect thing ever, Adrian Mole.
Exactly, and you've got to think, we were saying, well, what were the issues on Grange Hill? It used to be bullying, used to be heroin. What is it all going to be about now? It's going to be about still bullying, but there's going to be TikTok, there's going to be probably vaping,
it's going to be trans everything. It's going to be trans and safe spaces and free Palestine.
Absolutely, there'll be stuff like that. But it's there's a big movement at the moment in the TV world for nostalgia. We've had Gladiators come back.
Oh, that's
Baywatch
good. I love
back.
Gladiators.
We do love it really.
Risk of death and maiming.
Yeah.
Proper sport. And finally, a magistrate has been told off for banging. Oh, I just banged the desk earlier, didn't I? Talk about the budget. Sighing and swearing. Well, that's me out of the legal profession.
Yeah, well, look, I love stories about judges behaving badly. They're supposed to be, hold the highest standards in society. This is a lady who was, she's a JP, which is magistrate. She was in court, a family court. She was banging the desk, sighing, swearing. She was visibly frustrated, and a report found that she'd been eyeballing someone in the courtroom.
Eyeballing?
And made them very intimidated. The kicker is with this lady. Her name is actually Dr. Delicate.
No.
Dr. Amy Delicate. We did speak to her. She did apologise. She says she did have mitigating circumstances. She's very sorry about it, and it won't happen again. But yeah, poor old Dr. Delicate got.
Dr. Delicate. Haven't we got like a Lord Chief Justice Judge?
Yes.
I'm sure they are. I love that.
Justice Judge. Yeah.
Brilliant when people have a name that matches their profession, which John Lucas, sadly, yours does not.
No.
But thank you so much for coming into the studio. The brilliant night news editor for The Sun. We're going to take a short break now. When I come back, I'm going to read some of your messages, and at some point, that chaotic little creature known as Kevin O'Sullivan is going to sort of whirl in like the Tasmanian devil and be ready to entertain you for the next 3 hours. I'm back after this.
It will never, ever change. Just like I was saying, my mother's wisdom, she used to say in Bolton they'd vote for a pig with a red ribbon on it. Well, it's like Tunbridge Wells, they vote for a pig with a blue one in it there when they. But I think all that's turning around. But I'll tell you what really strikes me, though, having seen that poll and gone through the numbers, is if you add up Labour, Lib Dem and the Greens, and then you've got the SNP and Plaid Cymru as well, is they still get 50. There's still half the country who think those people should rule.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Right, let's squeeze in some calls before that disaster of a human being enters the studio. This is Raza in Surrey. Hi, Raza.
Oh, hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, doing really good. Thanks so much for having me on. This is my first time ever calling into a radio show. I've never done this.
Hey, well, that's cool. Congratulations. Lovely to have your company.
Yeah, just wanted to give my quick 2 cents on what you were talking about earlier, the whole religious debate about Christianity, etc. Yeah, I just want to say, I don't come from, I'm not the most religious person. I don't know everything. But I don't come from a Christian background. I actually come from a Muslim background, if anything. But when people talk down on Christianity, the establishment, or like the far leftists, I guess you could say, I find it really, really weird and like just really uncomfortable. I don't like it. I find it a bit strange, and when they're equally not as selective about Islam or any other religion.
Why does it make you feel strange? I mean, look, for me, I am a Christian, so obviously I find it personally egregious and upsetting. But for me, it's deeper than that. It's because actually this is a country built, you don't have to believe in Christianity at all to live in the United Kingdom. But it is a country built on Christianity. And it doesn't matter where you come from in the world or what your religion is. That's really hard to deny. You look at our legal system, our democracy, our social mores. It's basically all from this little book here. And I just find it so dangerous to start attacking that, because whether or not you like people who actually practice Christianity or think that's a good idea, whether you think the invention of God is some sort of mad thing that humans did and that anyone who believes in it is a wacko, the point is our society has got so much from it. And so when you start attacking it, you're actually attacking the stuff that makes us us.
Yeah, definitely. And my take is that a lot of these people who attack Christianity, I think deep down, maybe they're just too scared, but I think deep down they do resent Islam and Judaism.
Really? I mean, I just think there's this sort of, there's this strange rule in the West that you can attack Christianity as much as you like. In fact, you're cool if you poke fun at it, but you better actually augment and celebrate every other religion. And I just don't understand what outcome people want from that, because it won't be good. Raza, thank you ever so much, and well done for phoning for the very first time. All right.